Okay, we'll call today's meeting to order. Sorry, a slightly late start, but we're underway now. My name is Brian Mays. I'm City Councilor for St. Vital Ward. I'll be chairing today's meeting of the Riel Community Committee. It's our regular monthly agenda. We seem to be finally in the right month. So this is our October meeting that we're having in October. And I'm joined today by Councillor Matt Allard, Councillor for the St. Boniface Ward. I'll do the land acknowledgement, then we have a series of motions we need to do, some housekeeping motions, and then we'll be on with our regular agenda. So I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. So Councillor Allard, I think, has a few motions, one of which our third colleague is not able to join us today, Councillor Chambers. So, Councillor Allard, over to you.
Yes, I would like to move a leave of absence motion for Councillor Chambers for personal family matter.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's carried.
And I would like to move the minutes from the last meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's carried.
I would like to move a new delegation from the St. Boniface Museum, as well as materials provided by the St. Boniface Museum, which are two separate items.
Sure.
Well, maybe
Yes.
one
So
at a
just to
time.
clarify, so we're going to have suspend the rules to allow for new business for us.
Oh, okay, sorry. 3 items then.
Yep.
So I move new business. Councillor Reyes?
Sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move a delegation from the St. Boniface Museum.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that materials submitted by the St. Boniface Museum be included in the record as part of the delegation of the St. Boniface Museum.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so I'm not calling those in opposition because
Yeah.
there are only two of us. It's not that hard. Okay, so we have no other, if we have other items of new business, we can turn to that.
Correct,
But
yes,
I don't know that we do.
We'll just have the new business motion happen for the, I believe it was your motion that we talked about prior.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Good catch. Good
So,
man. Thank you.
thank you.
Great. Yes, well, I'll have to do that.
Do you want to move new business for your motion?
Yeah, that'll be the outdoor classroom naming.
Okay.
Okay, on we go then to hear from the St. Boniface Museum, I believe. And this is Mr. Balking? Mr. Winthrop, are you registered? Do you wish to speak?
I tried to, but late.
Tempting though it would be to leave you up there. I'll move a motion to hear from.
I'll move a motion to hear from Mr. Winthrop.
You're not on the public hearings, but on the No, you'll have to.
You have to speak to an item.
Uh,
2 and 3.
Very good. Okay, we'll hear from you next.
Okay. So,
Oh, good
move,
lord.
Councillor Mead?
Yes, moved by Councillor Allard to hear from Mr. Winthrop on items 2 and 3 on the, not the public hearing agenda.
Right.
All those in favor? Aye, that's carried.
Thank you. Je vais alors Serge, vous avez 5 minutes. Vous pouvez vous adresser en français ou en anglais, c'est votre choix. On a l'interprétation et le conseiller Brian Mays aussi parle français.
No, all good. I'm ready.
Okay.
Thank you very much, councillors. Yeah, thank you for letting us present to the Riel Community Committee today regarding the St. Boniface Museum. We believe that you have a vested interest in the success of the St. Boniface Museum, given its extreme importance historically to our French and Métis citizens. We also recognize and thank you for being signatories to the city's Indigenous Accord, which guides some of our efforts towards truth and reconciliation at the museum on your behalf. The St. Boniface Museum is the oldest building in Winnipeg and the only City of Winnipeg museum that offers tours and cultural experiences in French on a regular ongoing basis. In addition, it holds the largest collection of Louis Riel artifacts anywhere in the country. Louis Riel is arguably the most renowned historical figure with national reach and importance to Manitobans, but also to Canadians, which is evident by the number of schools and facilities named in his honor, located in places like Grand Prairie, Alberta. The museum will be celebrating its 175th anniversary in 2026. However, it is closed right now, and we must reopen to do so. As you know, the museum has a unique relationship with the City of Winnipeg because of its 99-year lease and indentures signed on June 20th, 1963, between the City of St. Boniface and les Sœurs de la Charité de l'Hôpital Général de Saint-Boniface, known as the Grey Nuns. During amalgamations, the City of Winnipeg took over the responsibilities tied to that indenture, which guarantees they would restore and maintain the building on the land to be used solely as a historical museum for 99 years in exchange for a reduced rent totaling $1 per year. Further agreements reiterating the City of Winnipeg's infrastructure responsibilities were signed in 82 and 91, with other levels of governments who contributed funds to the rehabilitation of the museum. In 1991, agreements with the Government of Canada, there was explicit detailed conditions to receiving the federal funds for rehabilitation, which stated that the City of Winnipeg shall, at its own expense, to the satisfaction of the Minister and subject to the conservation report, operate, maintain, and protect the Grey Nuns Convent in the same condition as its rehabilitated state for a period of 42 years, effective upon signing the agreement. Sadly, years of neglect and lack of capital funds from the City resulted in repairs and maintenance lapse, contrary to the agreement signed, which resulted in major structural and electrical issues that caused the closure of the museum in June of 2024. The Province of Manitoba, the Government of Canada, and private donors have provided us significant funds to assist the City with restoration and repairs at the museum over the years. However, the City consistently fell short on its contribution requirements. Now the outside funding opportunity have been exhausted at this time, and the museum is still not able to open its doors to the public. During the closure, we were forced to find alternative accommodations for our staff. Our Executive Director, Cindy Desrochers, did an amazing job finding a temporary location to continue operating essential museum functions, as well as providing cultural programs and events. But all of this came with additional costs for rent, moving expenses, protection of artifacts within the museum during construction. We are able to open our temporary location to visitors at the end of August 24. Cindy has been doing triple duty overseeing the operations at the temporary site, managing the capital repair project with construction companies at the closed museum, and submitting grant applications for supplemental funds to all levels of government and private foundations and donors. Unfortunately, we project a 2026 shortfall due to temporary relocation costs, and the only outside funds that can be accessed must be leveraged with further investment by the City. As board members of the museum, we are appointed by the City Council to operate the museum as per bylaw 4824/88, and we are here to appeal for your urgent and essential help to restore the museum in a timely fashion so that our opportunity to celebrate our 175th anniversary in 2026 is not missed. Cindy has asked many times for meetings with city clerks to discuss the urgency of our situation, but has been rejected each time, which left us with no other option than to bring this woeful situation to your attention here today.
Councillor Allard's moving an extension of how long?
How long would you like? We time the delegation.
Oh,
so normally
I
we
am
ask how
almost
much
done.
time. 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Move 2 minutes for extension.
All those in favor? Aye. Fire away.
So as the city begins deliberation for budget 2026, we implore you to prioritize the request from the City Museum, the St. Boniface Museum, which includes 3 critical aspects necessary for the continued operation of the museum. 1, an adjusted operational budget with CPI indexing, ensuring stability and preventing further erosion of city's operating contribution. A multi-year management agreement consistent with civic best practices, clarifying responsibilities and required by senior government funders. And 3, a financial commitment to help capital infrastructure of the building to leverage confirmed federal contributions and close the current funding gap. There is $1 million request of the City of Winnipeg on a $6 million infrastructure program. So the motion that we would like is that this committee supports and prioritize the request from the St. Boniface Museum for capital infrastructure funds on an urgent basis in order to leverage confirmed contributions from other governments to restore the building so that it may reopen to the public no later than May of 2026. So the oldest building in Winnipeg can celebrate its historic 175th anniversary milestone scheduled for September 7, 2026. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. And sir, just for the record, the clerk is reminding me, your surname is B-A-L?
CAEN.
Okay, and Serge, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you, merci pour la délégation. I'm very much aware of the happenings of the museum.
Okay. Yes, Madame Glover, who's been who was a very good friend to St. Vital Ward, I have to say, as an MP, and has been a good friend to St. Boniface Museum, alerted me to this. So the 175th is next.
In
I think I
2026,
misunderstood. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Good, thank you. Those are, I think, all my questions. And
Thank you
pass
very
on my
much.
thanks to Shelley, please.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Winthrop, then, I think. That was easy, straightforward, at least.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for allowing me to come down here and speak today. I tried to register, but there was a holiday and I got in late. I'm just going to quickly address items 2 and 3 because they're related. It's more really to thank Councillors Brian Mays and Councillor Matt Allard for all the efforts. They've spoken a lot about gravel back lanes the last couple of years. I heard on a council meeting a couple summers ago,
Yes, to be
Councillor Mays
fair.
speaking about it. It was on in the background, and I heard him, and then I thought, well, I think I met you for coffee, heard your views on it, and then I decided I'm going to try and do some of these local improvement petitions. The first one I did last fall was approved, I believe, last week at council. It's related a little bit to the amendment on the second one, because after hearing the councillors and the program for the 50% of the city putting it up there, I reached out to a lot of the landowners I know, and I suggested to them I'd like to try doing these local improvement petitions. The second one is the item number 3 on the agenda. Spent the summer going up and down its borders between Fermor and this street Inman, talking to a lot of the residents all the way into the fall. And a lot of them were, I'd say, the selling point was the fact that the city is funding half of it, 50%. A lot of the properties on there are some older houses along Fermor. A couple of them were, I don't want to say vacant, but the older resident was no longer there and it was transitioning into hands. And a lot of people saw the recent June 26th half amendments that required the asphalt if you want to do a fourplex or something like that. And that really spurred on a lot of people to think that they could do something more with their land than just having a 50-foot wide lot with a house on it. And a lot of the comments also were they were just tired of the gravel back lane. They wanted to see it improve. So really, it's thanks to the councillors for providing that funding for the 50%. That is really, I think, a lot of residents didn't know about it. They do now, and they're really signing on to the petitions. I just handed in another one on Monday in St. Boniface, with 80% of the people have signed on. And then I've got a couple other landowners who have approached me trying to get more petitions out the door this fall because they're really looking to upgrade their gravel back lanes. They've just had enough of it, and they'd like to see them improve. So it's really thank you to the 2 councillors here today for their efforts on this. A lot of the residents are really enthusiastic about changing their gravel back lanes. I'm open to any kind of questions if you have any.
Thanks, John.
Back lanes.
Thank you for doing this. Yeah, when we first started this, roughly 2014, 2015, my ward shot ahead and then plateaued, and Matt's ward has long since passed it by quite a bit, especially in Norwood. There's been a lot of this. So maybe this is a bit of a renaissance for St. Vital, because we've had very few in the past 6-7 years. So this is 2 more. So it's good. So the first one, it's not that you're just saying we don't want to do it on St. Anne's Road. It's that that's the local improvement we've just
approved last week, and almost all of them along that back lane, they knew the situation, but they also wanted to perhaps either upgrade their property or they were just tired of the gravel back lane. It's something they wanted to participate in and contribute towards.
Yeah.
I'm finding that more and more increasingly.
And thank you. So yeah, so I need not be concerned lifting that the same lane is getting the local improvement. And then thank you. If there's ground zero for back lane complaints, it is Inman. It is that traditionally the area where I do worst in elections is that bottom of the triangle.
Yeah.
So progress. So this is good. So yeah, thank you for the work you've been doing on this.
Yeah, and I just, on that block, neighbors who are across the street came out on the street and talked to me, and they're looking to do a local improvement on that one. Then the block to the east of this one, the neighbors there have been talking to me
Oh, well,
about
if
me
you
doing.
get that block,
Yeah,
there'll be
Yeah, so
possible parade in your, that has been the most problematic block in the entire ward, so.
yeah,
that's
after like walking up and down the block, neighbors would come out in the street, find out what I was doing, and then could we do it on, but and I a lot of credit to the local improvement branch. They are very great for customer service, for very seamlessly, really good. Because I'm not a resident, I have to get somebody to sponsor me. I volunteer my time, by the way, to do this because I like doing it. I'm wanting to see it's done. I'm in Winnipeg during the fall and the summer, so I'm happy to walk up and down the street. I just need usually a sponsor from a landowner to be able to do it. A local improvement branch is fantastic to deal with to make it going. So that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to get someone to sponsor me. But a lot of the residents on the surrounding blocks are really enthusiastic about doing something.
because that's the, if you find the right, because you're right, that June changed things. If you've got the pavement,
Yeah.
you're eligible, you're threeplex, fourplex, so some people don't want that, of course, but certain blocks, and this would be the area where older houses, yeah, that probably is more.
Well, also I found that even the 50-foot wide lots with a front driveway, and there's more than a few, the houses were transitioning, a couple of them on this block, to newer owners, and they were more than happy to consider it having pavement down the back. They were more willing to sign the petition, actually. I'd say they're younger, in their 30s, they're new, maybe their first home or starter home. They've taken over from an older person, and they were happy to sign the petition.
And yes, I agree. Jim Austin and company at the assessment have been, these people are into their
Yeah.
jobs. They'll get you the voters list.
Yeah, they're
stuff.
fantastic to deal with, really great, very seamlessly processed. That helps quite a lot to be able to get the petition out the door and then back in again. So I really thank them for that.
Okay.
I do have a clarification question. Is it not true that it is actually more than 50% that is paid for by the city with drainage included?
Yeah, I tell them it's like, I think the one on St. Anne's that came in higher are actually more than 50%. But I don't want to overpromise something and say, boy, the city's going to cover X percent. I know it's at a minimum 50%. That's what I communicate to people.
More than.
Yeah, and usually comes in, the one on St. Anne's came in more than 50%, which is, we're appreciative of that. But when the residents hear that the city's actually going to contribute 50% of it,
Yeah.
they're very positive that they're more willing to sign the petition then.
For sure. Just now that I'm in this
Now that
line,
you're
and
engaged.
I'm maybe less confident about the arrangement, but are you aware of any case where it wasn't any more than 50% from the city?
No, not at all so far.
Okay.
So I've done, I've got like 3, I'm on my 4th, 5th so far. Yeah, they're coming in at more than 50%.
Okay.
And I think no fault of anybody, but a lot of residents just don't pay attention to it until you go talk to them on their doorstep and they realize, like, wow, they didn't know the city was doing that program necessarily.
Yeah.
They're more enthusiastic about it. They think it's a real good deal for them.
Great. Well, if we could get 50-cent dollars on every infrastructure project, we'd be able to build a lot more.
Well said.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other delegations?
No one registered, Mr. Chair.
No further delegations on this part of the agenda, so we'll roll then into the main, I think we've got 3 items and a new business item.
Two new business.
You want me to take the chair, Councilor Mason?
I do. I think it's almost,
all-
I think
it's
it's
gonna
all
be
my
all-
stuff.
it's gonna be your agenda.
Isn't that ironic? Okay, yeah, take the chair, please. Item number 1, so we're having a public meeting about back lanes at Glenwood Community Center, and there's a group there with a giant banner talking about kids in kilts. So this is what comes of having public meetings. You start talking to people and you end up saying, I could fund that. So this is $13,000 to help the kids kids with kilts or kids in kilts? Help me out here, Zach.
I believe this one was to replace mirrors,
Right.
Mr. Chair.
But the group is, regardless,
Both
kids,
things would be
kids
true.
both in and with kilts. So, yeah, this is a great little project at Glenwood Community Center, converting one room so that can be used for dance purposes. So I'll move $13,000 from St. Vital Ward Land Dedication Reserve.
So moved by Councillor Mays, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
You're always in favor of dance items, Councillor. Item number 2 is what we've been talking about, taking out the condition requiring developer to pave because the surrounding properties have agreed to the local improvement on St. Anne's Road. So I'll move the Winnipeg Public Service recommendations on item 2.
So moved by Councillor Mays, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
Number 3, we're getting going again with doing these asphaltic lane improvements in St. Vital Ward. This is great. So just over the threshold at 61%, when you need 60. This is the advertising bit though, right? There could yet be a counter petition. We'll see.
Which can
So
then
I'll
be countered
move-
again? Which can then be countered again?
No,
No.
but,
All right.
but there, if someone comes in to object, it opens the window.
Right.
But you need 60 to overturn now.
Got it.
More than 50. So I'll move item number 3, moving forward with the local improvement for the block Inman to Fermor, west of St. Thomas.
Okay, moved by Councillor Mays, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Contrary, carried.
And we have 2 new business items.
Correct, yes. So we have the new motion regarding St. George Park, the outdoor classroom naming.
Great. Can you read that out for
Sure.
Councillor Allard?
Okay, that's new
Absolutely.
business.
That's
Did I
new
move that already?
I think we agreed to hear new business items.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So whereas James Peebles shared the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2019, and whereas James Peebles is an astrophysicist, astronomer, and theoretical cosmologist who has made major contributions to theoretical cosmology in fields as primordial nucleosynthesis and dark matter.
Primordial.
And whereas James Peebles is the Albert Einstein Professor of Science Emeritus at Princeton University, and whereas James Peebles recently celebrated his 90th birthday and is a graduate of St. Vital's Glenlawn Collegiate's class of 1953, and whereas St. George's School is located near Glenlawn Collegiate and has a new outdoor classroom located at the adjacent St. George Park, 151 St. George Road, therefore be it resolved that the Riel Community Committee recommend to the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services that the Winnipeg Public Service be directed to, 1, that the new outdoor classroom located at St. George Park, 151 St. George Road, be officially named in honor of James Peebles. 2, that funding for the signage be utilized from the Riel Community Committee Land Dedication Reserve from the St. Vital Ward allocation. And 3, that the proper officers of the city be authorized to do all things necessary to implement the intent of the foregoing.
My thanks to the clerk for stitching this together from some instruction, from some old notes from me. Thank you for that. Yeah, we first were going to name a street for Mr. Peebles, and that got complicated. Then we were going to do a park for Mr. Peebles, and there was a misunderstanding there, a genuine misunderstanding. Luckily, we've just built this fantastic outdoor classroom. And people might say, well, that hardly seems enough. Well, you know, the longest-serving U.S. Supreme Court justice ever was William O. Douglas, and if you look at his Wikipedia page, there's talk of an outdoor classroom being named in honor of William O. Douglas. So it is an honor, and Mr. Peebles has said, you know, sounds good. So I appreciate that. So, and you can't argue with anyone who has had the job title Albert Einstein Professor of Science at Princeton University. So hopefully this time we will get this through the committee and we can get the signage up and honor Mr. Peebles very close to where he used to go to high school. That would be quite a thing. So I'll move and again, you don't have to go. We're not exempting from welcoming Winnipeg by doing this because park assets don't go through that process. E.g., when we named Emily Potter Basketball Court in Memorial Park, we didn't have to go. If we'd renamed the whole park, that triggers the welcoming Winnipeg, but the assets within a park does not. So not suspending anything. This just needs to go up to community services, and we're done. Okay, so that is the motion. Councillor Allard has been very good at riding with me on trying to get this something named for Mr. Peebles, so hopefully this will do it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Mays. Thank you for bringing this motion forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
And what's our other business?
And last would be just in order to allow the St. Boniface Museum to speak, we just created a new business item for it, so I just have it at the current moment that the report be received as information.
Okay, so I move to receive the report of the St. Boniface Museum as information. That will then include the documents as appendices?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Excellent.
okay. All those
In the minutes, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, contrary, that's carried.
Okay, and that concludes our current agenda unless there's anything remaining that wishes to be discussed.
So we're going to reconvene then at 10:30. We are changing the order, if that's agreeable to Councillor Allard. There was a request due to disability issues, and I thought it was a reasonable accommodation
Yes.
to move items 4 and 5 run together, to move item 4 and 5 up ahead of items 1 and 2. So apologies to those of you who came here to speak to items 1 and 2, but you're never sure where you're going to land on the agenda. And there are only 2 of us, so it should move along more quickly, so.
Yes,
Okay.
certainly.
Okay, so when we're back then, Mr. Clerk, at 10:30, it's Taché?
Correct, yes. Well, item 4 and 5.
Good. Okay, we stand down till 10:30. Okay, we're back, going back to order. As indicated earlier, we're moving items 4 and 5 up on the agenda. So welcome, a number of people registered or just here in support. I see Grant Mitchell here, who's an old legal adversary of mine and a running friend of many years' acquaintance and a good champion of Kelvin High School as well. So good to see Grant here. That doesn't indicate any bias on my part. We had many
Who won?
legal battles. Well, the reason we get along is we both have the same best marathon time of 2 hours, 46 minutes, so, but thank you for letting me put that on the record. In any event, on we go then with items 4 and 5.
Okay. In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, the process the committee will follow is the applicant will be heard first, followed by those in support of the application. Next, those registered in opposition are heard, followed by those registered for information. Finally, the applicant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made, however, no new information is permitted. Please note that when your name is called, it is your opportunity to speak. However, you are not obligated to do so. For a more in-depth overview of the public hearing process and other information pertaining to what happens before, during, and after a public hearing, please consult the City Clerk's Department website. Please note that all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. Should you have any questions after the hearings have concluded, please contact the City Clerk's Department.
All right.
Okay. Item 4 is a subdivision and rezoning at land located at Taché Avenue, south of Rue Hébert, north of CNR line, and east of the Red River, under file DASZ 30/2025. In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter, the Development Procedures Bylaw, this is a combined hearing, and the following item will also be heard at the same time. Namely, item 5 is a proposed closing of portions of Rues d'Arvaux, Hébert, and Public Lane west of Avenue Taché for incorporation into DASZ 30/2025 under file DAC 5/2025. Please note, communications were received in support of and in opposition to the matter, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. And at this point, I will hand this over to the planners for overview.
And so we've got the infill guidelines all-star team here. We got Platt and Mahe and Clark all here together again, so good to see. And been a while since we had all of you here, so good to see some familiar faces. So, yes, over to is Mike.
The planners first.
Planners first, all right.
Thank you. So the subject property is located on the west side of Ave Taché, between Rue Hébert and Rue d'Arvaux, in the North St. Boniface neighborhood of the St. Boniface ward. The site is currently vacant, zoned M2 General Manufacturing, and is approximately 135,374 square feet in area. The subject property is located within the Established Neighborhoods Mature Community Policy Area under the Complete Communities Direction Strategy 2.0 and within the High Density Residential Policy Area under the North St. Boniface Secondary Plan. The city is the applicant in preparing this parcel of land for development of a mixed-income residential development with affordable and accessible housing units. The city will retain ownership of the land and will enter into a long-term lease agreement with the proponent. The land will be subdivided as follows. Lot 1 will accommodate the multi-unit residential development on a lot size of approximately 26,000 square feet, which is to be zoned RMFL, Residential Multifamily Large. Public reserve will be established along the river and include lands that are currently open road right-of-ways on Rue Ibert and Rue Darvaux. These lands will be consolidated with the vacant lands along the river and amount to a total area of around 2.35 acres or 102,000 square feet. These lands are to be zoned PR1 and are being proposed concurrently with the road closing application, as mentioned. Residual lands located at the northeast corner of the site will be approximately 6,600 square feet and will remain zoned M2 general manufacturing. The information included with the application submission was done prior to the successful proponent being chosen for the development. So with the submitted plans, it included information that indicates the development will have approximately 65 units and be as much as 7 stories or up to 80 feet in height. However, since the submission was made, the expression of interest process has closed and a proponent has been confirmed, which is the Réseau Compassion Network. This organization intends to establish the building as fully accessible, supporting up to 20 people with physical disabilities and including at least 20 affordable housing units. At present, it is understood that a building height of 68 feet is proposed, but that some flexibility in this height may be required to address issues that could arise during the detailed construction drawings. The Urban Planning Division is recommending approval. The development supports housing targets under the Housing Accelerator Fund, which includes a requirement for the city to build a total of 14,101 units over the next 3 years, including at least 931 affordable housing units. The proposal helps meet residential intensification targets and goals of providing diversity of housing options in the city. The development will better utilize existing infrastructure, including the street network, active transportation paths, water and wastewater service capacity, and other community services. The development will result in improvements to Taché, bringing it to an urban standard with sidewalk. The proposed development will be required to come back for plan approval and align with the policy objectives of the high-density area of the North St. Boniface Secondary Plan, which includes objectives to ensure the design of all buildings reinforces and contributes to a strong residential streetscape character and pedestrian environment, and to ensure the design of all buildings reinforces the relationship between the buildings and the street and contributes to the activity and vitality of the ground floor facing the street. The proposed development complies with the density policy within the high-density residential policy area in that it achieves a lot area per dwelling unit of 400 square feet. The proposed building height is compatible with the surrounding area and other developments recently built or approved nearby. And the proposed closing of roads and consolidation of lands along the riverbank will result in a net increase of designated public reserve park space. And for those reasons, we recommend support, and I'm happy to answer any questions if required.
That's raise any questions?
Yeah, any issue, have we had a previous debate about this parcel of land, or am I thinking of something further south? That
Oh, no, you're thinking about this one.
There was a previous application on this land. It ultimately did not proceed.
Okay. Any issues with setbacks from rail? I mean, obviously rail is elevated here, but any?
Yeah, we did review that against the rail guidelines. There's a little bit of background on that. In 2015, council directed planning to explore creating rail safety mitigation measures in Winnipeg. A report was prepared. Ultimately, Those recommendations have not been adopted. However, excuse me, reviewed it against a number of the criteria in that document. It does outline that the standard setback from a principal main line should be 30 meters. It does indicate that that measurement should occur to a mutual property line. In this instance, there is a bisecting property being proposed, the closing of Darvaux, which becomes parkland instead of the RMFL land. It also indicates that variations to the setback may be considered where there are elevation differences. So in this case, the measurement from the property line to the RMFL line is around 20 meters. The RMFL district requires an 18-foot setback. As you go taller, the yard setback is required to increase, so that takes it another 5 meters. This was reviewed and determined to be appropriate and acceptable within the context. And then if we were to measure it from the actual rail line itself, we would achieve up to about a 38-meter separation distance to the proposed building.
Okay. Thank you. And current zoning for the whole thing is M2?
Correct.
Okay. And that the gain of the public reserve, I don't know if we have that in acres or hectares or...
I guess none of it is technically designated as public reserve right now, if I'm correct.
No, but...
So it's, the gain is 2.35 acres.
Okay, thank you. Inching toward our 1,000-acre target. Okay, Councillor Allard?
I'm going to wait here for the
Okay.
presentations.
Very good. All right, on we go.
I think we also have the Peter Conley to speak in regards to the closing of the street. Do we have him on Zoom?
Sure. Consolidate here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's that.
Hi, Peter, are you here with us?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so there isn't really much to add. The proposed street closing, as been said, will be converted to public reserve. And the proposed public lane closing is being consolidated with city property to form the site intended for the housing development. And the rest of the stuff's been already mentioned, so this will be closing itself will be incorporated into the ASZ 30 of 2025. There isn't really much else to add.
Okay, so to Councilor Mays, through you to the delegation. So you're in support of the application as it stands today?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. In that regard, we'll move now on to the applicant. We have Mike Lennon to speak on the matter.
Wasn't the thing we approved before on this land bigger?
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for having me here. I'm Mike Lennon. I'm a program support specialist with a Housing Accelerator Fund team, and I'll be presenting as the applicant on this application. So what's being decided here today? This is a subdivision and rezoning application with a road closing application. This application is going to facilitate the city's ability to enter into a land lease for the construction of a multifamily residential building. So this just shows out what's being proposed. For the rezoning, on the left you have the current zoning, and this you can see this whole area is zoned M2, that's manufacturing general. On the right you have the proposed rezoning after the subdivision and road closings. And so you see the addition of road space that will be closed and added to the public reserve, which will be zoned PR1, Parks and Recreation 1. And the subject property is going to be RMFL, and that's where the proposal for the multifamily residential building will be done. If you see this T-shaped space just north of the subject property, that's residual land, and it's going to remain untouched and not rezoned for this application. I'm just going to show another image here that shows the current use of space, the satellite view of the image. And so you see where the roads are right here. So the blue space is Rue Darvaux to the south, Rue Hébert to the north. As you can see, these are paper roads. They're unimproved, they're not paved roads. In addition to the orange space, and that's the public lane behind Taché, again, this is a paper lane, it's a gravel lane, and it's not improved.
Well, is it a paper lane or is it a gravel lane?
So it's the current condition, it's mud. I don't know if it was made to be gravel lane in the past, but it's not, it's missing gravel right now. So I don't have the full answer to that question, but currently it's a pretty muddy lane. I can show you some images of it later. So why develop at 825 Taché? As you may be aware, Winnipeg is in a housing crisis. This is reported frequently. Council identified 825 Taché last year in September as one of the priority sites to delegate for affordable housing. This location is ideal for residential. It's within walking distance of multiple shopping districts on Provencher. Lots of park space, including Whittier Park, which is a large park just 1 block away, and frequent transit service. That includes frequent express and frequent transit lines 600 meters away at Provencher. What is the Housing Accelerator Fund? Devin spoke briefly about that. It's a national program starting in 2023 through 4 installments. We have a target as the city to reach 14,101 units, and that's including 931 affordable housing units. And that's in addition, 931 in addition to what we would otherwise have as affordable housing units. In the Housing Accelerator Fund, was created a land enhancement office, and the purpose of this office is to identify city-owned land that could be used for affordable housing opportunities. Just to go over the policy context, this proposal fits with a large number of City of Winnipeg policies, including our Winnipeg 2045 Complete Communities 2.0, the North St. Boniface Secondary Plan, the Winnipeg Park Strategy, Climate Action Plan, Poverty Reduction Strategy, and Housing Policy. So this is going to create affordable housing development consistent with policies through multiple plans. It's going to create residential near frequent and frequent express transit routes, and will continue, add to the network of riverbank park space. Here you can see in the North St. Boniface Secondary Plan, the proposed location at 825 Taché is in the high-density residential policy area. You'll also notice just to the left, along the river's edge, is a green space, and that's Parks and Recreation policy area. So the vision for this property, we embarked in a public process for the disposition of this land through an EOI. That was in the spring, and through this process, we had identified the proponent, Réseau Compassion.
That would be your time. Councillor Allard, do you want to move an extension?
How much time do you need?
Could you give 5 minutes?
That's amazing.
I'm all right, but anybody else who wants an extension of time, I'm going to vote to give an extension of time. I mean, I voted against this whole 5-minute limit when we brought it in, so you don't get 5 minutes extra if you're, supported by the councillors. So, Councillor Allard moves 5 minutes. I'll support that.
That'll be the standard for today then. Okay,
All right.
I move 5 minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll go quick. So this is going to present at least 30% affordable housing units, high degree of social impact, partnering with Cohabit. It's going to be a long-term land lease with affordable housing, so the city retains ownership of the land. This is going to be a lease. 65 units of accessible housing design. So this is going to be a fully accessible building. It's going to have a high-quality urban design. And as I mentioned, we're going to retain public ownership of the riverbank land. Development partners include Réseau Compassion. They're working with Cohabit. And Cohabit's vision is to build accessible, integrated, and affordable apartments that nurture the connected community culture for all people who live there and are looking for a sense of belonging. On 1 week ago, on Wednesday, September 24th, I believe, 25th, the Réseau had a community engagement session. They may be able to speak to that further, but it was well attended and there was a lot of feedback at that session. And some of the themes that were discussed were accessibility, green space, and desire for sidewalks at that session. To give the zoning context, as Devin mentioned, it's M2 zoned land. It's R2 across the street. The neighboring properties are M2 zoned. Manufacturing, some of the context for the surrounding neighborhood. 780 Taché was built after this North St. Boniface secondary plan. And this is a 7-story building, 87 units. It's zoned RMFL. To give context, this is in close proximity to the existing site. There's also a number of other similar scale buildings, not as large as that one, 4-story, 62 units, zoned RMFL, 153 Aubert, RMFL 6 stories, 175 Aubert, it's a 4-story RMFL, 20 units, and 760 Taché is a 4-story building with 48 units. So just to compare this to the prior proposal in 2016, the current proposal is proposing 65 units. That's a smaller amount and smaller building footprint than the past application in 2016. The land area is 0.6 acres for the residential development. That's about half of what it was in 2016. More than double the amount of park space at 2.35 acres and greater distance from the river at 77 meters. I mentioned the building height here is at 68 feet. However, we're asking that in case design considerations come up or during the construction design, to allow up to 74 feet for flexibility. Site plan design considerations. So the building is going to be a positive addition to the street level, improved pedestrian access. It's a high quality buildings design. It's going to include underground parking, possibly, depending on the designs. It's going to minimize the visual impact from Taché to the parking area, and vehicles will access the site from Taché. It's also going to create the park space adjacent to the river, and the development must comply with the flood-proofing criteria in accordance with the designated fringe area regulation. So this is the green space. Again, going back to the secondary plan, you can see that it's along the river's edge policy identified for green space. This is just showing the intent. This is not green space yet, but we're nearing a complete linear path from Taché to Whittier Park. Improvements along Taché are going to include a new sidewalk, west side of Taché, new boulevard and street lighting on Taché, as well as a new land drainage pipe. This is just showing you, here's the lane closure, what it's going to look like. And then next steps, finally. We're here to finalize the rezoning application. After that, the developer is working to secure financing once the land is rezoned. The city will draft a lease agreement, and then the developer will finalize the design concept, engage the community on the finalized concept, return to community committee again for design review, and they will have to apply for a development permit, waterways permit, and a building permit. And that concludes my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Good job. All right, just 13 seconds to spare. Councillor Allard, any questions?
Councillor Mays, through you, the public service, how you did public consultation, presumably. How did that, or I understand how that go?
And this is something that the Réseau would be better suited to answer, but Réseau held a public open house. The issue here is normally in a rezoning, we might have further designs along. We're doing the rezoning application, just the rezoning here, and then the designs will come at a later stage. And so the public open house gathered feedback about design considerations and just general feedback from residents. It was well attended. I don't have the exact numbers, but Rezo could speak further to that.
Okay, and they're set to speak?
I'm sorry?
They're set to speak? Or,
Correct.
okay. Councilor Mays?
Two things, and I'm looking for a document here while I'm asking my questions, so just bear with me for a second. First question is, don't take it personally, but whenever people come and say there's a housing crisis, I take it to mean there's a crisis of affordable housing units, because every budget, we have a long presentation about how affordable cities' housing stock is compared to other cities, and what a great job we're doing keeping our housing stock at a cost far less. So I just get weary of being told whenever there's a development application, we're in a housing crisis, and whenever we're in a budget being told that, in fact, no, our housing is really quite affordable. But I think the director has said, yes, both things can be true. We can have a relatively affordable housing stock, however, we have a lack of affordable housing units.
You are correct that affordability, when I speak of a housing crisis, I'm speaking of affordability. And while Winnipeg is more affordable than many other Canadian cities, the affordability has drastically decreased over the last decade, last couple decades. End Homelessness Winnipeg had released a point-in-time count recently that showed the homelessness crisis was at peak levels at an all-time high. I don't have other specific details I can share with you about the extent of the housing crisis or affordability, issues with affordability, but it is increasing, and there is a great need for affordability, hence the creation of the Housing Accelerator Fund and the Land Enhancement Office in this program.
Yeah, I mean, I take issue with anyone who says allowing $250,000 fourplex units is going to help the homeless population, because it just isn't. I mean, that's just, unless you have the most long range, well, this will increase supply and somehow eventually some units at the bottom end will then become available for people who can't currently afford them. But I think the larger point we're in agreement on, that housing is still relatively affordable here, but there's a lack of affordable housing units, and this goes toward, maybe more, this goes toward the HAF target of 931. Okay.
That's correct.
Second question, maybe more for Mr. Kowalik. This is in, the way we're doing the combined sewer work, the final districts to get done are like Dumoulin and some other ones right around here. This is like, if we pick up the pace and get done by 2046 instead of 2095, and that is the plan, that this is one of the final areas. So speak to me then, obviously you're adding more units than at present. What's the plan in terms of combined sewer?
There's some great opportunity for this site. It's currently serviced by a combined sewer. That means both the rainwater, currently enters the combined sewer at this site. However, there is a land drainage sewer to the north that can be extended, which would offset the increase and actually provide a net reduction to the flow to the combined sewer by diverting all the runoff from both the street, the right-of-way, and this property to a direct land drainage sewer that doesn't contain wastewater.
Okay, good answer. That one tunnel we're planning to build is west of Taché, but it's south of the rail line, isn't it? I'll see if I can find a more specific, I'll have time. I'll come back. But thank you, that's a good answer, that it's, if you can extend the land drainage, you come out ahead. Okay, thank you.
I don't think I have any questions at this time.
Okay.
I'll wait to hear from the delegations.
Okay, on we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. In that regard, we'll now have those in support. So first up, as registered, we have David Cron. Invite David to come down. Nothing on that. Next up, we have registered Daniel Lucier.
Dan Lucy. Trying to find my sewage district map.
Bonjour, Monsieur les conseillers. Je m'appelle Daniel Lucier. I'm Daniel Lucier. I'm the CEO of the Réseau Compassion Network, and I'd like to speak in support of the rezoning that's being proposed. Le Réseau Compassion Network apporte une expérience et des connaissances en matière de construction, de logements abordables, mais aussi en matière de création d'une communauté intentionnelle. Et on est excité d'avancer avec ce projet. Réseau Compassion Network is looking forward to the opportunity to develop this site once the rezoning process is complete. We've gained some experience and knowledge in building not only affordable housing, but a model that encourages an intentional community where people from different backgrounds, abilities, and needs are given the chance to thrive and reach their full potential. We've seen this happen with our most recent affordable housing project, Les Suites Marion, which is open now and has been open for a little over than 2 years today. For this proposed site, we've been in conversation with Cohabit, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later, and other collaborators like Action Marguerite, one of our network organizations, and we're all united in developing a housing solution for people living with cerebral palsy and other physical disabilities. Il existe un écart important dans les services offerts aux adultes ayant des déficiences physiques qui ne répondent pas aux critères d'admissibilité aux services provinciaux destinés aux personnes qui ont une déficience durable ou récurrente, soit de leur capacité physique, mentale ou sensorielle. Si une personne a besoin d'un soutien plus important que celui offert par les soins de domicile, les options disponibles sont de vivre avec sa famille, qui n'est pas toujours viable à long terme, ou dans un foyer personnel. In listening to Cohabit and other collaborators, there is a significant gap in services for adults with physical disabilities who do not meet the eligibility criteria for provincial disability services. If someone needs more support than home care can offer, the options available to them are to live with family or to be placed in a personal care home. Living with family in many cases is unsustainable as parents age, and living in an institution may violate human rights and dignity. In short, there is a clear need to develop this type of housing solution. The proposed rezoning will, we believe, provide our collaborators with the best possible opportunity to bring this housing vision to life. Our intention, as you now know, is to build a 65 fully accessible apartment building with at least 20 affordable to deeply affordable options that will be used to support people with cerebral palsy and other physical handicaps, along with on-site supports. We've had the chance to invite community into this conversation, as you've heard, through an open house that we held last week. Over 75 people came out to learn more about the vision. We believe the rezoning proposed provides enough height and density to ensure we can economically and sustainably offer affordable rates that the city requires in its expression of interest related to the development of this site, all while respecting the height concerns we know the community has. The reduced footprint available to be developed will also ensure that green space and access to the riverbank is protected for all to enjoy, something that is equally important for Réseau Compassion Network. Lastly, I want to thank, and we want to thank as collaborators, the City of Winnipeg, the Mayor and Council, for doing what it can to support the development of more affordable housing and allowing opportunities for people facing so many different barriers to access quality living environments and, where possible, additional services to support their flourishing. These projects are very challenging and likely not possible without the tools the city has put in place, like the Housing Accelerator Fund agreement with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and the Land Enhancement Office. We look forward to moving forward with this project once the zoning process is complete. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mays. Through you, merci Daniel pour la présentation.
Oui.
Est-ce que tu pourrais peut-être décrire un peu ce qui s'est passé durant les consultations avec le public? And for those who may not speak English, wondering how that outreach event went with the public.
Yeah, I would say as a first conversation with community, we had over 75 people attend. I think the vast majority were supportive of the vision of the development project. I think everyone agrees there's a need for these types of housing solutions. If there were concerns, I think there are ones we've just commented on, Councillor. One is the protection of green space. I think for some in the community, they would likely not want to see any development along the river like that. So the more we can protect the green space, and we believe that's what's happening here with the zoning process, I think the better for the community. Height obviously is an issue within the community. We think this is a reasonable height to work with as a developer. Again, the economics of this depend on some density. The lower you go may make it more challenging for us to make that happen. So the height is an issue, I think, for some that we heard that evening. And then accessibility. I think there's some real concern with the lived experience people and their families that we're listening to. Even when we start redoing sidewalks and the streets, and accessibility along the public pathways is going to be something we're going to want to pay attention to if we're truly going to make sure this vision comes to life, which we hope we can.
Okay. That's raised. Questions?
So the,
Paul, you're in the chair.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
The green space then, is that leased back, is that, the green space is, the city retains that?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. No, I think those are all my questions.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we'll have Jennifer Rodrigue. And Jennifer, I invite you to come down. You'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me, council members. My name is Jennifer Rodrigue, and I work both for Cohabit and Action Marguerite, and I've spent most of my career working in the disability community. The disability community as a whole is made up of different groups of people, most commonly grouped by type of disability: intellectual, physical, blind, deaf, neurodiverse, learning, etc. I spent 17 years in the intellectual disability community, learning from people with disabilities and their families about their life and their wants and their needs. I saw a lot of change and a lot of progress for people with intellectual disabilities over the years, closing institutions, shifting to person-centered supports, focusing on human rights and dignity. There's a long way to go, but the train is moving in the right direction. About 2 years ago, I was introduced to Margie Nelson, the founder of Cohabit, and I was reminded that to qualify for adult disability services in Manitoba, you have to have acquired your disability in childhood, and you have to have an intellectual component to your disability. As you heard Danielle say, this leaves limited options for appropriate and dignified housing for people with significant physical disability. When I first started in this job, which is half-time working with Action Marguerite, which is a personal care home and also offers supported housing for elder care, I attended a conference where a researcher opened the conference by sharing that 100% of older adults surveyed in Canada said they would rather die than move to a personal care home. That's a startling statistic, but if you think about it for a minute, it's not actually very surprising. Now let's remember that the group surveyed is older Canadians, and that the average stay in a personal care home is 18 months before end of life, and that 100% of those people surveyed would rather die than move there. For people with disabilities who don't qualify for adult disability supports, their average length of stay in a personal care home is their whole life, decades of living in an institution where we have claimed to have deinstitutionalized disability support services. And don't get me wrong, the staff at Action Marguerite are amazing, far above what I see in lots of places. But no one chooses to lose their independence, privacy, and choice. This project is about accessibility and disability support, but it's about so much more. It's about human rights, true inclusion, and belonging. People with disabilities are not sick from their disability. They are sick from loneliness. David Petoniak said that. In Canada, more than 1 in 10 people over the age of 15 indicated on the last census survey in 2021 that they are always or often lonely. The loneliest people are younger adults and older adults, and it skews to people who live alone. Research shows that loneliness affects our mental health and also has significant effects on our physical health, increasing the risk of heart disease, stroke, hypertension, dementia, and premature death. So, turns out it's not only people with disabilities who are sick from loneliness. It's a widespread epidemic that affects many people in this room. In addition to building an accessible and inclusive community for people with disabilities, one of the other project goals is to address loneliness by creating a community of belonging, or an intentional community. Intentional communities have been shown to reduce loneliness by nurturing regular interaction, mutual support, and a sense of belonging through shared activities, meals, and spaces. Residents living in an intentional community report decreased isolation, higher levels of trust in neighbors, and improved overall well-being. We are aiming for a Cheers vibe, if anyone can remember that far back, where everyone knows your name. This building is so much more than affordable housing. This is an innovative project that will demonstrate and model, one, that there is a great and diverse need for true accessibility. It is marketable and rentable and should be mandated for all new builds. Two, that support services can and should be delivered anywhere. Segregation has only ever served to increase bias, reinforce negative stereotypes, and exclude people from opportunity, purpose, and meaningful connection. And three, that building an intentional, connected community will positively affect the health and well-being of every person that lives there, not just the 20 people that we are looking to deinstitutionalize. A 65-unit building that is actively focused on measuring well-being, community connection, and belonging. I have about 30 seconds left, 10 seconds left.
2 more minutes? Okay, I'll move 2 more minutes.
Like 30 seconds.
Oh, I move 2
We
minutes?
insist on giving you 2 more minutes.
Councilman, you want to call the question?
Aye.
A 65-unit building that is actively focused on and measuring well-being, community connection, and belonging will spill out past the doors and into the community. This is a project that has community at its heart. We are incredibly grateful to the Housing Accelerator Fund for this project. Without that kind of support, we could never build this project. We are very, very grateful to Réseau Compassion Network, Action Marguerite, Prairie Architects, and most especially to all of the people with lived experience of disabilities who have consulted and helped to imagine and dream this project. It takes courage to change, and I'm hopeful that our council will make the courageous decision to support this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mays, questions? I'm okay.
You're okay? Thank you for coming down here.
Okay,
It's,
no questions?
I've had a lot of issues with the Housing Accelerator as it pertains to fourplexes, but this is the good side of the Housing Accelerator. So thank you for reminding me of that and some other side. So it has made certain projects economically possible. So I don't know how we'll vote today, but that's, thank you for bringing that forward. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have registered Charlene Hamill-Hampton. We have a registration for Zoom, but she is not in the lobby. I just want to look to the gallery to see if Charlene is present. No? Okay, next we'll move on then to Carolyn Taylor. You're invited to come down, and you'll have 10 minutes to give the presentation. Carolyn?
5 minutes.
Oh,
Shirley.
okay. Oh, hold on. Okay. Ah, okay.
Yes, Carolyn. It's 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yes.
Hello, bonjour. I'm representing.
Welcome, Carolyn. Yes, you've got up to 5 minutes to speak to us, and we'll, if we have technical difficulties, we'll stop the clock and sort that out.
Okay, thank you. I'm representing everyone who has disabilities and cannot speak for themselves. I would like to say we have the right to be housed in a place that gives us independence and a free liberty to dream and to live our own wills. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming down and speaking today.
Thank you.
Councillor Allard?
No questions. Thank you for coming today and
Thanks.
making your voice heard at council.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have registered Damien Finez. Invite you to, Damien to come down. You'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Good morning, bonjour, councillors. Thank you for having me speak on behalf of the support for this development. I'm Damien Finet with Prairie Architects, and I'd like to walk you through some of the design intent of the project. Not sure if the presentation is loaded up. To move forward, it's the key. Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to do is walk you through a little bit of our design process. It's preliminary stages of design. We've been working with Réseau Compassion and Cohabit to develop this project. Just maybe recap a little bit on what Michael had presented on the site. What this image that you see currently in front of you is the photo of the site as it's seen today. As an overview of the site, it's the top left-hand corner. This is in North St. Boniface, so it's on the east side of Taché. We're surrounded by mixed use of buildings in this area, so there's from industrial to commercial to single family, and as Michael had identified clearly, quite a bit of high-density housing up to from 3 stories up to 7 stories. So we're in good keeping. And the site that you see here is the developed site that what we're proposing. So it's the dotted line in red. That would be the property. It's around 260,000 square feet. The main floor plan that you see here is about 60,000 square feet. And the property is roughly around 252 feet from the riverbank. So there's quite a bit of green space to the west. There's also reserved land, green space to the south. In this image, north is on the right. And then you have the Highline as well. That's on the left-hand side of this image. So our intent is to develop a property that is accessed predominantly from Taché. So you would have access to the park space to the south, and then the building itself would have access on the main floor in the center, as well as underground parkade access towards the northern side of the property, and then a service lane on the extreme right of the property, which is on the north side of the property. Conceptually, this is an image of the building that we're working with currently. It's 6 stories, 65 units. The main floor is a predominantly amenity space with some office, commercial kitchen, and dining space. The upper 5 floors, are all residential. Sorry, a little hiccup here. Okay, I think we're good. So what you see here is a little bit of a closer up version of the previous image. So what we're trying to do is develop a project that's more sympathetic to the neighborhood. We're breaking down the mass into 2 different components. So you can see that there's a color change in the material, color change as well as a material change in the building. So we have the white and then the potentially masonry block. So we're trying to scale down the development. We're also pushing the white portion back on the site. So it's creating a little bit of a podium, an upper terrace overlooking Taché, and it's becoming more of a sympathetic, pedestrian-friendly feel to the building. As you're walking up the sidewalk, the mass of the building is set back slightly on the property. You can also see on the left-hand side the park space. I think the intent would be to maintain some access to the rear park of the site, so adding some pathway that directly leads from Taché. So the property would not block some of that development. This is a close-up view of our proposed entrance. We have a fairly large canopy that would be sheltering some of the residents. Obviously, mobility is a challenge, so we want to make sure that there's a large canopy to allow the residents to wait outside of the elements. We're also incorporating benches to be more community-oriented, as well as an off-street lay-by to afford the residents loading and unloading in a safe manner off the street. Everything that's being proposed here would be fully accessible, would be one level and interconnected, no curbs. This is a view from the west side of the building. So this would be facing the river, the downtown, the park. This image is just representing how consistent the building will be from the Taché side, the more public side, to the back side. So a lot of the features and moves are consistent. The building is set back, the material change for scale is reduced, as well as terrace overlooking the park. And this is my last image. This shows the terrace area on the back side of the building. It would be directly accessed from the main floor of the building out to the park side. So this is on the river side. You would have the plaza area interconnected with the park with pathways leading into it, as well as an upper, I have maybe, less than a minute.
Do you need a bit more time?
Just 2 more minutes, 2 more seconds, really.
I move a minute extension.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. So the intent here is to have eyes on the park and community use to the park as well. So really bring some life into that park, bring some added safety and, eyes for safety. A lot of the concepts we're showing are preliminary. Our intent is to take it to the next stage with this user group and focus on specific items, to incorporate, I guess, their specific needs into the project. But certainly this is the groundworks for that next step. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
2 questions. The kitchen functions, there's not a dining hall then of some sort, is there? Did I miss that? No, I mean, the commercial kitchen is functioning to provide meals for people in their rooms?
There is going to be dining space. I think what we're trying to achieve going to Jennifer's comment about a space like Cheers, it's a welcoming, warm space. It's not a dining room. It's a family gathering space where you would have the ability to eat as a group or bring those meals up to your room
Okay.
as you wish.
Thank you for, again, perhaps better directed to the admin than to you. Often we get in debates here about people setting aside either land or 10% of the value for land dedication funding. We've got a lot of green space here, but it's already the city's. It's quite a technical question, which is when the city is the applicant. Richard, can you take me through that?
Yes, as the applicant, the city's making the application. Notwithstanding the fact that we are making the application, there's still that 10% requirement. And as you can see, all this land is M2. And so by closing both the Darvaux and Hébert right-of-ways, and including converting this M2 land into green space, we're far exceeding the 10% requirement.
Okay, that's what I hope that was the answer, so, because otherwise you're looking at a cash payment. So, great, okay, thank you. Thank you.
No, I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Merci.
Okay, next up, I just have David Cron, who has entered our Zoom meeting. David, can you hear and see us?
Yeah, I can hear and see you. Yep.
Okay, perfect. If you can turn on your camera, you'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Sure.
And David, it's Brian Mays here, if you can just identify
Sure.
your organization, and yeah, you'll have 5 minutes and a bit more if you need it.
Well, I won't need any more than 5 minutes. I think the presentation speaks for itself. My name's David Crone. I'm the Executive Director of the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba. We have, hundreds of members that are looking for accessible, affordable housing. And this project that we started back in 2019 really does fulfill the goals of the association, the goals of the individual families, and the goals of the individuals. We want to get them out of personal care homes. We want to get them out of their parents' basements. We want them to be part of the community. If there needs to be a variation on the zoning, I think it needs to go through. It's a lovely piece of land. It's right on the river, and everybody deserves that piece. And the city was kind enough and saw enough forethought in order to grant us that land. So, we're here to stand in support of the Cohabit project and move the project forward.
Okay, that was well under 5 minutes.
Yep.
Well, Councillor Allard, any questions?
I have no questions.
So the funding for the construction, is that all Housing Accelerator, or is this a mix of funding sources?
It is going to be Housing Accelerator. It is. We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. We plan to raise more. It's we're working on that part next. Is now that we have the land, we can go to the different funding bodies and say, hey, we're ready to go. We're shovel ready. Our biggest barrier right now is to get the funding for the staffing of that, but we're working very diligently with the province of Manitoba to get those dollars in place.
Great. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, lastly, we have registered and support Andre Granger. He was registered via Zoom, but
Someone's in motion.
seems like Andre, yeah, perfect. Well, welcome you to come down, and you'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Morning, everyone. I'm not going to take a lot of your time here this morning. And not repeat everything that's been said. My name is André Granger. I'm a board member of Action Marguerite, and I have been on the board for about 1.5 years now. And I just really want to speak in support of this project. I think as a board member, I've seen over my time there how important it is for us to provide adequate housing, accessible housing to people. And really, I think this project really represents a move forward in a very positive way about integrating people, right, of all levels of capability. And I think it's really, I think, an opportunity for us as a group and a city to move this project forward, an opportunity for us to make a difference in our community. So I would, again, simply say that this is a project that has been really well thought out. You've seen all the presentations this morning. It's got a very positive impact, or possible positive impact to our community and in St. Boniface in general. And so with that, that's it. That's all I'd like to say this morning, and thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was clear to me, Councilor Mays.
No, that's clear.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes those registered in support of this application. I'm just going to turn now to the gallery to see if there's anyone who was not registered who does wish to speak in support of this matter.
Yes, actually is.
Yes.
Which is rare. Interesting.
My name is Jackie Wilkie. I'm with McGowan Russell Group at 825 Rue Saint Joseph. Just wanted to speak in support as somebody who is part of the neighborhood. We feel that this project would be a great asset to our neighborhood and the workings within it. Looking at the rezoning, it fits in very well with the secondary plan, and the park area that's being provided allows for the master plan for the area to be completed with the pathways. So we would just like to have our support registered on as officially. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. No.
Okay. Okay, so that, again, that concludes those registered in support. Again, one final time, looking to the gallery to see if there's any others who are not registered. Okay, I will note no one. Next up, we have those registered in opposition. First, we have Tom Scott. I invite Tom to come down to speak for 5 minutes. Seems Tom is not present, so therefore we'll now move on to Susan Campbells. I'll invite you up and you'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation in opposition. Susan, yes? Yep.
Merci. Je suis un membre de l'Association des résidents du Vieux-Saint-Boniface. I'm a member of the Old St. Boniface Residents Association. And at our annual meeting, we have decided to vote against the rezoning. I'm not going to discuss the project's merits or concerns of the project that would look at the height of 55 feet. And we would welcome conversations with the organizations to relocate in another place within St. Boniface. But we would like to talk about that the land should be park. It was discussed with deep concern of the history of the City of Winnipeg's willingness to take the most recent development in our community as a precedent for the future development. Just recently, the community opposed a development that went against the past views of the City of Winnipeg planners and the residents on the height of buildings for most of the past buildings to be ignored by the precedent over one recent build that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. North St. Boniface population has increased in the last 3 censuses, and compared to it's the highest population since 1976. This achieved by the appeal of the community, in part due to the open and accessible riverbank system we enjoy today. This recent position of this committee and the city have opened serious concerns over riverbank development on the west side of Taché, and will be viewed once the precedent would be set with the approval of this rezoning. The community has long fought for scenic Riverbank Parkway, which was like included in the land in question today. If the land in question today can be seen to achieve a completion of the Riverbank Park with this development, what is it to say that the present Riverbank Park that is located on the rest of the area could not be rezoned and also developed instead of just parkland? This is a slippery slope that the community has concerns and being used to undo our past achievements in protecting the riverbank that is open to all for access and views along Taché. To instill confidence to the community, would this committee and the city planners for North St. Boniface be willing to assure the community by way of acknowledging that this development is an exception and it will not be used as a precedent in future requests for any development of a park west of Taché or north of Messenger? And that's it.
All right, thank you.
And je peux répondre en français ou en anglais, comme tu veux. Si tu veux.
Councillor Allard.
Yeah, I guess the rules of order say I have to ask a question, but so the North St. Boniface secondary plan, which was a big project that included support from the Residents Association, support from residents in the area, many meetings.
Oui.
It does call for a park
Yes.
on the west side of the riverbank,
That's
and
right.
it uses the development process in order to create that park,
But you have,
as is being proposed today. So I
Okay.
wanted to know if you knew that that's what the plan.
well, we looked at that, but also Taché is what used to be called the dike, and now it's called Riverbank something or other. There's a huge concern from our organization that if there's flooding, it will go up to Avenue Taché, the floodwaters. So how can that be a good use of the riverbank for development for people who will have to leave anyway if the place is flooded? So, I mean, it's a slippery slope, and if it's not protected, if this is a single incident of development, that's one thing, but then this committee and the City of Winnipeg has to make a commitment that this is the only one. It's not setting a precedent, and we are not in agreement that this is a precedent along the riverbank.
Okay.
And that's very, very clear. Is that clear to everybody? Because that's the clear message that we want to send.
So it's clear to me. Are you speaking on behalf of the association today, or as a resident in the area?
Pardon?
Are you speaking on behalf of the association
Yes.
today, or
Yes.
as a resident?
Yes, on
Okay.
behalf of the
So,
association.
on behalf of the association, is the association now opposed to
Yes.
completing the park?
As
on
of the
west
annual
side
general
of
meeting,
Taché?
as of the annual general meeting that we had in the
He
spring.
he asked you a question, and you're answering a
No,
different question.
Yeah, no, I think it's been answered that the Residents Association now opposes the creation of a park on the west side
No,
of Taché.
not a park, no. We're concerned about development on the west side of
Right,
Taché.
but the association is aware and participated
Yes.
with the process. Like, this is not a slippery slope. This is an approved plan.
Well,
that the
yes, but
association is
you've had
aware
an
of.
approved plan, and you went against it for higher buildings within Old St. Boniface.
Well, the
And-
approved,
Yes.
okay, that we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that,
Yes.
because the planner said it was consistent.
Yeah, you went from 55 feet to 75 feet.
Okay.
I think that you need, and because of that, you said, oh, that sets a precedent for new higher rises in the area, because you allowed that one development, and then you said, oh, that's a precedent. So we want to know that this is not a precedent for you,
Yeah,
and that that the community wants it to be park, but if it can't be park, this is not a precedent for development.
okay.
I don't think we can legally commit to something
It's
being
just
approved
every-
and not being a precedent.
What I can
Well,
say,
you know,
what I can say is the plan
those are the
calls
words that that have been used, and that's the concern, okay? That's our concern, because the project is not, we're not against the project, we're against the location of the project.
But
And
I
we're-
gotta ask you, isn't, and
Hey?
maybe the division here is north or south St. Boniface, but there's a full-on hospital west of Taché, between Taché and the.
I beg your pardon?
There's a hospital between Taché and the river. So, I mean, it's not all green space. I mean,
Well, I agree, and that's an issue. You know, like, there is a hospital, but there's a little pathway around, you can go down that, you can ride your bike around it.
yes, I've done that, yeah.
I mean, if you
Right.
want
I mean,
to.
Not sure what's going to happen today, but we're trying to, and we are building this path. And this proposal today
Yes.
converts industrial land to
Yes,
parkland,
yes.
which is another chunk of the path,
Perfect,
if approved.
perfect.
Okay?
But it's zoned PR right now, right?
No, it's zoned
Oh,
industrial.
That's what we're trying to
Okay.
do here.
Okay, well, it's,
So,
to change the zoning to
If we
PR is
approve-
fine.
So if we approve the zoning today, we're going from
Yes.
industrial to parkland and
Yes.
residential.
Yeah, perfect,
Okay?
perfect. It's just a concern about the slippery slope of building.
Well, and I want to just like put emphasis on the secondary plan because I don't want people to think that that this isn't a precedent, because this, if approved, would be a precedent in order to, for further consideration, if ever there's development on the west side, finish that park. So I don't want you to think that this may be the end of the slippery slope. Like, that would be subject to further public hearings. The plan is to have more parks along the riverbank.
Okay,
Remove the industry, build the park. That's the plan.
okay, well, it just seems to me that if you're on the west side of Taché and you're going to fall into the river, it's not safe for housing.
Well,
I gotta-
can I just comment? Like, I've been on that path. It's informal. There are places that feel very unsafe at times behind some of the industrial buildings. I think one of the sites has been blocked by a fence. So this is the type of thing we would like to formalize in the future. Maybe we'll do it today as part of this application. But in future applications, the hope is that eventually we can have a park that connects all of the west side of the Taché there
Yes.
to connect eventually to Whittier Park. But there are big industrial buildings in the way right now, including this one lot, which is an industrial lot. Yeah, I
I'll
invite
leave
you
it
to
with
take a
you.
look at the
I'll leave
secondary
it-
plan.
This was the huge discussion at the resident association about these kinds of things, and for and against, and back and forth and all that stuff. And we wanted, just to be clear, that we want it to be parkland. And we want it to be
It's pretty clear to me.
aware that it's, that sort of a danger of building on the floodplain. That's all.
All right.
Well, another danger would be an industrial application coming forward, but the secondary plan would also block that. Fair point.
Okay.
And I will say, just final comment on the west side of Taché. When Dan Vandel left here, I thought perhaps I'd heard the last, mercifully, of the Taché Promenade discussions, but Councillor Allard picked up the baton on that, and it came to pass. It came to be, it's there. It's been there for a while now. So lots of money has been invested into the green space and Belvedere at the Taché Promenade. So, okay, thank you for the presentation.
Okay,
Appreciate
merci
you coming
beaucoup.
here. Merci.
Merci.
Yep.
Okay, that concludes those registered in opposition to this, on this matter. Just looking to the gallery now to see if there's anyone who is not registered who wishes to speak in opposition. I will note no one. Okay, next is for information. I have no one registered for information. Oh, no, no one registered, but I do see somebody in the gallery who wishes to speak for information, so I invite you to come down. To speak, yes? You wish to speak, correct?
For information, is what I heard.
Yeah, for sure. You're welcome to come down. I'll just have you sign a
You just
registration.
want to register it.
Yeah.
And
Sure, Councillor.
someone in support has.
Good morning, Council. Just for information, I reside at 851 Tash Avenue, and my concern is when it does become park, that the boundaries of the park be defined, especially on the north side of Rue Hébert, where it enters private property of M2 zoning, and if there could be some signage there to stop the people from entering the pathway alongside private properties. So I know, kind of concerned too with the removal of the right-of-ways, especially Rue Hébert and Rue d'Arvaux. I noticed in the report that CN hasn't contacted the City of Winnipeg at this time in regards to their position of the removal of the right-of-way. I know that in the prior application from the other developer, I believe CN did comment in regards to keeping d'Arvaux open as a right-of-way in order for them to access the bridge for repairs. And for La Rue Hébert, I questioned the removal of the right-of-way there, because currently with the right-of-way, it protects the vista that we see from Rue Hébert, looking westward towards the city, where you see the city skyline. If we move the right-of-way, I've got concerns that someday there'll be something there built, and we would lose that vista and that view of the City of Winnipeg that everybody so enjoys right now. Those are my concerns.
Okay.
And like to be registered for information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And just a comment that I think a lot of that is, if this goes forward, is as is mandated by the secondary plan, things that are done at plan approval, not the public right-of-ways, but some of the other issues that you mentioned, like signage.
Like signage, yeah. Especially on the north boundary where it enters, because what you're doing is you're encouraging pedestrians to cross on private landowners' properties.
Which they're doing.
And for their sake, for liability issues, I mean, keep the public onto the public lands and kind of get proper signage. We had signage in the past and it gets vandalized. I'm hoping that signage stays up this time, but it would be appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We do have someone who has now joined who's in support. I want to get the clerk's thoughts on, is there a procedural risk here? If we hear from another person who's in support, do we then need to reopen for people in opposition and people for information?
It's up to the discretion of the committee which order to do the representation, so procedurally, we would be allowed to return to support.
Recall, Councillor Mays, the great zoning debate where the public hearing was opened and then closed on the floor of council.
Yes. Yes.
So I think we can, if we agree, we can
Okay.
agree to hear
Well,
this.
if it all ends up at King's Bench, it all ends up at King's Bench. All right. So we will motion. Do we need a motion, or do we just need to hear from the president?
You know, out of an abundance of caution, Councillor Mays, there was only one person in opposition.
Fair point.
Perhaps we could
That's my view. Is
right.
let's not.
So perhaps we could just reopen it and just ask the questions again if anybody else wants to speak.
Okay,
Second.
I'm fine with that. That
Okay.
Seems, okay. So, we'll hear then from this person on the Zoom call.
Okay. So registered now is Shar Hamill Hampton. She'll be on Zoom and she is in support and you have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Hi, just a little bit of background on my husband and myself. Our daughter, well, why this new building at Taché would be important. Our daughter passed away last year at 32 years old. She had cerebral palsy. Our plan, we've been working with Margie Nelson for years now with the hopes of having Cohabit built, which is given approval now to do a mini version at 825 Taché. Our plans were and still are to move into Cohabit. It's different now. We were going to be going there with our daughter to help out, but we still plan on wanting to volunteer to help our friends and neighbors with disabilities. And just the importance of the place. Right now, there are so many people in personal care homes that are younger, and that's not the right place for them. And there are people, elderly people, waiting for spots in personal care homes that are in hospital. So this is just important to the community at whole. Like the spots would be open in Cohabit for the young people with disabilities to move into Cohabit, which would open up the personal care home spots for the people in hospital waiting. And we're just hoping to make this an all-inclusive committee, people with disabilities, just people who are ambulatory and just all-inclusive, everyone helping out. And just it's really important to us. And thank you. Thanks for allowing me to speak late.
All right, thank you. Sorry for your loss. Councillor Ellard, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, have we lost our? Thank you for the presentation. I don't think there were any questions. Out of an abundance of caution, then we'll reopen to see if that led to any further delegations
Should we
from
have
any.
Mr. Clerk do just
We should?
go through the whole process?
Okay,
For
so
sure.
just.
For sure. Okay, so that concludes those registered in support. I will look to the gallery once more to see if there's anyone who is not registered to speak in support.
Or if anybody wants to speak again, I guess is what we're getting at.
Not in support again, but I think you have to give an opportunity to those who spoke in opposition or for information
Correct,
too.
yes.
Right.
So that'll conclude those in support. Now we'll move on to the opposition side. Just look, we've concluded those registered in opposition, so look into the gallery again to anyone who has not registered who wishes to speak in opposition. I will note no one. So now we have returned back to for information, and I believe we have somebody who has just recently registered.
Mr. Winthrop, welcome.
Good morning. I'm still here. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this item here for information. I think everyone would applaud and hope that housing gets built in Winnipeg. This seems like an interesting location for housing. It's how we get to housing, the process, how we get there. We all want housing. A lot of my clients have asked me to come forward and say they see this as a positive as well for housing. But how do we get to housing? What's the process? What's the steps we go through? So I'm going to talk about three things today: rail proximity, flood fringe, and trees. I've done a lot of projects involving all three of those. I think I'm notorious for one of them, if not infamous.
Oh, more than that, John.
I
Give
know.
yourself some credit.
I've done a lot of projects along the branch lines along Pembina Highway, 2525 to Pembina Highway, 2537 Pembina Highway, and of course the Parker lands. I was at a public hearing last April. I'm going to hand you the minutes of that meeting to make sure they're on the record here. My understanding, and this is from several different planning reports, the department standard process for DSZs that abut rail lines that has been to include railway mitigation measures in the zoning agreement of a DSZ. At the Parklands public hearing, we had a very robust discussion noted by Councillor Orlico on page 15 that the box we spent the longest time talking about today, and we should, because it's very important, is the rail line safety. The administration had recommended that the zoning agreement specify required rail mitigation standards in alignment with Federation of Canadian Municipalities guidelines for new development proximity to the railway operations. The Parker lands, the new buildings proposed there are the exact same distance as from the CN main line as this proposed building. The Parker lands also has a park space between the buildings and the rail line. You can look through the number of conditions that are required for the Parker lands to get that one finally across the line, starting on, I believe it goes through a number of pages, starting on page 6 through page 7, page 8, into page 9. It requires everything that prior to the issuance of building permits, a certified professional engineer's report be submitted to the director that addresses rail proximity and safety. That's we're required to do berming, fencing, height, studies, crash walls. All of that is required. I've seen that multiple times, as well as along 2525 Penma Highway, 2537 Penma Highway. Those buildings were 15 meters from the rail line on a branch line. This is the CN main line. There have been accidents before on that main line, I know, 20 years ago. Of course, we want to see housing, but we want people to be safe, including people who are non-ambulatory or ambulatory, or whether it's half-funded housing or non-half-funded housing. You would think safety would be the same, and the same requirements would be put on the developer of that property as has been placed on elsewhere in the name of public interest and for safety. So there's a number of conditions that were attached to the Parker lands, including uniform fencing, etc. I'll leave that now for rail safety. I have another handout here. Perhaps the committee will recall when I was at a public hearing in February of 2023 for a piece of property in the flood fringe area. I've done since then a number of properties that are in the flood fringe area. This one's in the flood fringe area well. I'll read the report from the plan.
This is the...
Macbell Road.
Thank you.
Where we all learn about the flood fringe.
History is a nightmare.
History is...
You're trying to... is a nightmare, whatever the James... Anyway.
Yeah, I was required, or the client of mine was required to bring in not one, but 2 engineers to attend the public hearing to speak of how the flood mitigation, and by the way, that land was not even on the riverbank. This is on a riverbank. Typically on riverbank properties, and I've done more than a few of them, a geotechnical engineer, letter, report, or something is in there about bank stabilization. But for flood now, and I've done this one as well as actually another one on Roslyn Road, helping somebody there. I'll read from the planner's report for Macbell Road. Last page, recommendation. The Public Service recommends rejection for the following reason. The proposal is not consistent with policies under the Strategic Infrastructure and Resource section of Complete Communities, which, quote, discourages subdivisions where it would be impossible to comply with the applicable flood fringe regulations.
2 minutes. I'll move 2-minute extension.
Well, you're in the chair, I think.
Okay.
I'll move 2-minute extension.
Thank you. At the very last page is a section of Complete Communities, section 9.1, about regulating subdivisions in the flood fringe that says exactly that, discourage subdivisions. The planner drew a direct line from that policy to my requirement, or my client's requirement, to have geotechnical engineers produce a lot of information to indicate that compliance was possible under those provincial regulations. And then again, the committee adopted by council a number of regulations that had to be prior to the release of the subdivision, analysis and design recommendations considering seepage, slope, a bunch of studies to be completed before the Mylars are released at the plan of subdivision stage. Engineering reports, all of that, prior to the Mylars being released. You need the Mylars to be released to get the land title before you can apply for a building permit. So those were all conditions the committee thought was suitable then, and the Public Service supported and wanted at that time. Finally, trees. Every time an applicant comes forward, they are required to submit an arborist report, not only to look on trees on their property, but trees on the adjacent properties now. You'll have another public hearing later today, I believe, where you can see an arborist report is on the agenda. Lots of trees on this site, so I know my friends, the tree advocates, will be questioning how many trees are going to be lost, damaged, or destroyed by the proposed new building. I don't see the arbitrator's report indicating that. That's typically required here. So those are all my comments. So I do thank you this morning for the opportunity to speak on these items. I think everybody would like to see housing. So how are we going to get to that housing? I think when the circumstances are the same, we should all be following the same kind of process and requiring the same amount of information so a committee can make a wise decision and make sure the appropriate conditions are attached to address rail safety, flood fringe, and to protect and preserve trees. Thank you.
One question, I guess.
Thank you,
Councillor
John.
Mays?
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Winthrop. I heard what you said. I think I understand what you mean to say as well. Perhaps I would ask, do you think that we should bake in these requirements into our development bylaw? Therefore, should we apply this citywide, I guess, these particular cases? Because you brought them as evidence, so should we reform our development bylaw to make sure that all of these things are done before any development in Winnipeg?
Well, the FCM guidelines actually indicate that. If you look into the FCM guidelines, they say the cities, municipalities should adopt a separate kind of bylaw, almost like a PDO here in Winnipeg, say here's what the rail setback conditions would be. That recommendation came out over a decade ago. The city hasn't taken that up. Perhaps in the new zoning bylaw, they would take forward and have a PDO in the new zoning bylaw, similar to the airport. There was a PDO there about addressing building too close to the airport. I think from a practical point of view, it would work in perhaps in the new zoning bylaw to have a PDO to address that. Other than that, since the FCM guidelines came out a decade ago, it's been a case-by-case, attaching them as a zoning agreement. That was the argument the planning department made last spring on the Parker lands, and that's why instead of having it in the PDO, where it was crafted, that I had done there, it was placed into a zoning agreement instead.
Well, thank you. I'll review this closely, and I'll see. Thank you for your activism on
housing,
making our guidelines tougher on development.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
We've handed you some ammunition here to be used at some future date, but I don't think it really dissuades us on this particular project, but fair points. I will ask the administration about the trees. That's a fair question.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes those for information. One last time, I'm going to check the gallery, see if there's anyone who's not registered who wishes to speak for information. I will note no one. Okay, so now I offer the opportunity to questions for the public service. Mr. Chair.
I'll start just by asking about what's up with the trees. Is that coming when we do the plan approval, or obviously we're saving a bunch of park space. That's a good thing, but.
Yeah, so there's no, from what we can tell, there's no trees on the property that's being developed. The trees are on the adjacent lands.
Okay. Blunt enough. Thank you.
I don't know. Does the public service want to speak to Mr. Winthrop's insights?
I'll just touch on the flood protection. The McBell was a unique situation where we were dealing with single-family dwellings. The rule set for single families and how you meet the DFAR is quite stringent. In that case, they needed to rely on each other to fit a I forget the details, but it was something like a 45-foot dike in a 50-foot lot, in which kind of, the finger math showed that you couldn't fit a house in the 5 feet remaining. So that one was a pretty unique scenario where there probably is a solution, but it would need community engagement of all the lots. This site is a little bit less stringent. You're only looking at about a 4-inch fill to meet the FPL level of the site. So it's pretty minimal to make it flood-proofed. It's not an impossible ask, and there's not really concerns from an engineering standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Moving on then to rebuttal.
Oh, I do have just another one for the public service on the record, so it's not
Okay.
me saying it. On the slippery slope concern from the resident, would the public service speak to the secondary plan, and what does it say about the Taché West Bank, and is this development conforming or not to the secondary plan?
Yeah, sure, I'll speak to that. So the secondary plan does identify this area as high-density residential policy area. There is parks and open space land identified in the secondary plan to the west of this site. And so the proposal for multifamily housing within this section of the plan does comply. With respect to amendments in the future, potential amendments, I guess as park space, it would require 2/3 council vote to deem it surplus land and sold for the potential for development. A secondary plan amendment would also be required to carve off those lands from being identified in the parks and open space area.
Okay, so if I'm hearing this correctly, Mr. Chair, through you, the public service, council would only need a single majority vote to sell this land currently as it's industrial land?
Is that, it's not designated parkland currently. So the sale of the land is in a different process.
If you're talking specifically around the future.
No,
park
if
space-
there were a sale today of this, of this lot, before it was zoned park, wouldn't that be a simple majority vote?
Yeah.
If it went up for sale?
As my understanding of it is, yes.
So if this development goes through, the park that's being proposed, if it becomes park, is protected by a 2/3 council vote. And if I recall correctly, Councillor Mays, that's a hard 11 votes. It's not relative to 2/3 of the members present, it's an actual 11. Recalling the Bruce Oak Recovery Center conversation, where we just made 11 on that one.
Not sure of
on
that, but
one
yeah, for
building.
sure it's a 2/3.
So there is an additional protection
It's
for
an-
park if this development goes forward.
Yeah, this development is intended to create park space, and you're correct, it would add another layer of protection, both in terms of the secondary plan creating park space and the need to amend that plan in order to make it not park space, as well as the 2/3 majority as well.
Okay, and then this parcel of land was already, I guess, rezoned, and then that development didn't work out. I think it's fairly obvious. Well, I think it looks like it's much smaller. I think you've said it's much smaller relative to its footprint, and the amount of park would be much bigger than what was proposed the last time. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, as with the presentation by Mr. Lennon, the amount of land that we wanted to bring forward as part of this property as part of the Housing Accelerator Fund was to create a smaller development parcel, creating more park space. We heard from residents back in 2016 for a clear desire to protect green space and along the river's edge, and we share that vision. It's in the plan, and we wanted to reinforce that, both with regards to making the development area smaller than previously in 2016, as well as enshrining the park space through closing of the right-of-ways in order to make them as well safeguarded as park space. If we don't do that, in theory, someone could close portions of those streets and bring in residential here as well. So this would enshrine it as park space as well.
So if the right-of-way is closed and they're made into parkland, this also makes it a 2/3 council vote?
Correct.
As opposed to a single majority vote?
Correct.
To do anything other than park with the land?
Correct.
Okay. Would you speak to affordability? Councillor Mays has mentioned it. I heard in the presentations, I heard affordable, deeply affordable. I know there are targets at this time, but would you speak to the type of affordable housing that is being hoped for as part of this?
The minimum requirement as part of the expression of interest was 30% of the units to be less than 80% of medium market rent. We are working with the Réseau Compassion Network to, I know their desire is to get as affordable units as we can get here and as many affordable units as we can get. But the minimum requirement is 30% of the units be affordable with less than 90% of median market rent. I know there's a clear desire to get deeper affordability and more affordability, but that will depend on discussions around financing with other levels of government.
And then does the public service have definitions for deeply affordable, or does that fall within the affordable category and then it's up to the government at that point?
We work with different, every level of government has slightly different kind of definitions on affordability, but typically that's rent geared to income when we talk about deeply affordable. You know, it's as affordable as we can get it is I think, is the goal here, and we're working with, we're lucky we got a development partner that is, has that social values and social impact as part of their mandate, and what they do. And we're quite lucky to be working with them, and we look forward to getting a project here that will have both as much affordability as we can get. But the thing that we haven't really spoken about a little bit is the fact that, one, the length of the affordability will be longer than most affordable housing projects because we're tying it to the land lease. And so that is quite remarkable in and of itself. The only other example would be a Granite project that is currently at the municipal board. And the other piece around that too is there's not a lot of affordable housing units that are fully accessible as well. And I think that is a really big key to this project is, and I think you saw some of the, and heard from the speakers, is there's a desire and a fundamental need to house people and with dignity. And this project does that.
That's right.
One of the criticisms I certainly leveled, and others did, at the fourplex part of the housing accelerator was it had no requirements for affordability and no requirements for accessibility. So just all of this is accessible. You've marched us through the affordable part, thank you for that, but all of it's accessible.
The market and our market are accessible. And it's a pretty unique building in that regard, and I'm not sure there's another one like it in the city. And so I think it's going to be really important to our housing stock to have buildings like this.
This, venturing a bit afield here, this building would not be eligible for that infrastructure grant money that we had on 12 or 13 different separate corridors.
Yeah, so I think what, assuming that the rezoning goes through, the HAF office is looking to support this project.
Assume that.
And we need to just wait until this process plays out.
Fair answer. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now I'll invite the applicant to come up to speak if they so wish to speak in rebuttal.
I'll begin. Thank you, councillors. I'll just address some of the points that were brought up. We're happy that there's been some good discussion here today, including a lot of support on the benefits. I'll just talk about the park space. Again, as mentioned earlier, this is currently zoned M2. It will be an addition of 2.35 acres of park space that's protected as public reserve. It will require 2/3 of council to change it. So this is an addition. An additional protection is that it's in the secondary plan, and it would require a plan amendment to undesignate this as park space in addition to the other requirements in the future. As for tree protection, I'll just mention the space where the building is going to be located. This was a parks yard until 2014. So it was an actively used space with the building on it, and it's the footprint of this lot that's being built on. So it's not within the treed area closer to the river that will be built on. As for proximity to the rail line, as I mentioned before, there's going to be an adjacent parcel created, and so generally this won't be directly abutting the rail line. And lastly, this will require a waterways permit, and it will require some flood mitigation measures that may be necessary. It will be going to plan approval, so this is not the final decisions here today. There's going to be another decision at plan approval. Again, this is a project that brings much-needed benefits to the community. It's an intentional design. It's going to provide spaces for people with physical disabilities and services. And it's going to provide a lot of park space, 2.35 acres, that will connect to the existing park space in spirit of the secondary plan for the area. And that concludes my points.
Councilor Mays, the public service had answered most of my questions.
What do you mean by the phrase, it's an intentional design? Aren't all?
Yeah, intentional community. So instead of a accidental or a community that forms naturally, it's intended as Rezo had mentioned in Cohabit about there's communal space, like the eating area. I don't know what to call it, but there's communal space within the building, and the building's built to allow for community living.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Time for motions?
Okay, so it's report 4.
Correct,
It-
Councillor.
I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's carried.
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and forwarded to the
Standing policy.
Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. Do I give my supporting reasons now?
Now, just, why does that not go to EPC?
Probably-
We had people.
probably because of the
Yeah,
lease
thanks,
and
that's, yeah,
stuff.
we did have one, fair enough.
Is that the answer?
There's one
Well,
person.
Just
in
opposition, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I move, I'll just say it again.
Yeah.
Do I say my supported reasons
Yep.
after the
Correct.
motion? Okay, so I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and forwarded to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development. In terms of supporting reasons, there are many merits to this project. I am seeing, if this goes forward and is successful, the creation of new park space by the riverbank, subject to 2/3 council motion for anything to happen to that. I also understand it's protected by the secondary plan, which calls for park here, as well as high density residential development, which is what's being proposed here. I think it's going to bring many new people to the community. We have a business district, the Provencher Business Development Improvement Zone, that is constantly happy to accept new patrons, and I know that the more people live within distance of a commercial district, things like restaurants and cafes, the things that St. Boniface has long aspired to have on Provencher Boulevard, are made more possible politically and through the people's patronage with their dollars. And I really do think that this, speaking of some of the people at the announcement that we had, I really do think that this creates a space that is much needed and does not exist anywhere else in Winnipeg. And it sounds to me like if the hopes of the proponent occur, that this may be a first and a best of in Winnipeg. So I'll leave that for the supporting reasons.
Yeah, I'll be supporting Councillor Allard's motion. Excellent elucidation of supporting reasons. Affordable housing, accessible housing. The height is not excessive. The green space is being preserved. In fact, being solidified here. You're right about needing a 2/3 vote once you have that rezoned as park. The combined sewer concerns are addressed. The tunnel in La Vérendrye sewer district is actually going to be further south of this, south of the High Line there, so that's dealt with. So hopefully we can get this through, and maybe Mr. Mitchell will come and run on the path with me at some point to christen that. But yeah, I'm certainly supportive of this project. So
You don't You don't want to name the tunnel and the sewer in your name
Oh, well,
at this time?
Not at this time, but eventually, yes.
Councillor
The
Mason's
only,
worked
the
very
only
hard.
sewer tunnel in the city, so it seems
On a water and
appropriate.
sewer.
Okay, I'll call the question then.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's carried unanimously.
And then I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Please note that the committee has made a recommendation on this matter that will now proceed to council. No further representations are permitted on the subdivision and rezoning. All persons registered for the public hearing will receive notification when the matter is to be considered by council.
Yeah, I think that's one more vote on this one. After that.
Okay, and
Oh, do we have to do the closing?
Yeah, the next.
closing,
Oh,
yes.
The closing?
Sorry, that's on me.
That's all right.
So we still have to do the closing, and then we'll discuss taking a
I think 20-minute break after.
20-minute break after, and then we're back to number 1, but we'll come back to that. Okay, so.
Okay, I'm not sure, I'm looking through, oh, I see, okay, it's very small script. So I move that the Winnipeg Public Service be, recommendation of, I'll start again.
Is it a
Report
simple
5,
step?
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and forwarded to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development.
I'll support that. So call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and sorry, just a second. Okay, please note that the committee has made a recommendation on this matter that will now proceed to council.
Okay, so folks, thank you for your patience. And again, I think we needed to reasonably accommodate people on items 4 and 5. So we've got items 1, 2, and 3 to come. 2 and 3 will be a combined hearing though. So I think we may need to lay over 1 from the sounds of things, but we'll deal with that in 20 minutes or so. All right.
And a recess, don't count.
So we'll recess for 20 minutes and then we'll be on to public markets. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. It's the October 1st, 2025 Real Community Committee. We're on to the public hearing section of the agenda. We're returning from a brief adjournment. We have dealt with items 4 and 5. Due to the reordering of the agenda, it is my understanding that one of the parties on number 1 feels they cannot proceed today, but I guess we'll get the item underway and then we can see what Councillor Allard, how he would like to proceed.
Okay, of course, Mr. Chair. Okay, so item 1 is a secondary plan amendment at Public Markets, land bounded by Marion Street to the north, CN Railway and Spears Road to the east, CP/CN Railway to the south, and CP Railway to the west, under file SPA 4/2025. Please note, communications were received in support of respect to the matter, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. The process the committee will follow is the applicant will be heard first, followed by those in support of the application, those registered in opposition, and those registered for information. The applicant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made. However, no new information is permitted. Speakers will be permitted 5 minutes for their presentations. And yes, and I'll turn that back now.
And is the applicant technically City of Winnipeg on this, or that property owner is applicant, but we have a number of public servant? We have some issue. There's a lengthy report, basically. There's a report and appendices. Okay. Applicant then, as I understand it, is requesting a layover for maybe the well, I'll check with Councillor Allard. Applicant, we could hear from the public service and then lay it over, or we could. The applicant.
If the applicant wants to lay it over, I'm okay with that, just personally.
Okay.
Do you want to go? Do you
No,
want
I'm
to speak to it?
fine with that.
Okay.
Okay, in light of, and I do think it was the right thing to do to move items 4 and 5 up, but apologies to the applicant for not advising them of that change in schedule, as that impacted their ability to present in the manner in which they wanted to today. So I think in fairness to all parties, Councillor Allard, do you want to move a layover then of item 1?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, if I may just intervene quickly. So just to clarify for the record, if we proceed to adjourn, we would adjourn it to the October 29th, Real Community Committee scheduled for 10:30 a.m. Here at the council building, and would we like reps to remain open?
Is it October 29th?
Correct, that'll be our next one.
Have we opened representations yet?
No, but it's, we are required to state whether representations are open or closed.
Well, do we need to open them?
The file is open, so
So it doesn't matter. Okay.
just to confirm, we would be keeping representations open, correct?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, therefore everything's checked.
Okay, so it is October 29th. I thought it was the 22nd. My apologies on that. It is what it is. All right.
I'm just thinking, no, in terms of laying this over and the application, like Councillor Chambers isn't here. Like, if he were here next month, could he hear the item?
I believe he would have to adjourn, he would have to recuse himself because the item is officially open based off the speech.
Oh, because we opened it.
Yeah, correct, Councilor.
Okay. All right. It is what it is.
It is what it is. All right, so moved by Councillor Allard then to lay over, and again, apologies to folks for the reordering, but so moved by Councillor Allard. All those in favor? Aye. That is passed, so we will hopefully get that up first thing. We've had a long road on that public markets land, and we continue.
Okay. In that regard, we'll then move on to our final public hearing item, if that is
In
appropriate.
that regard, on to our final public hearing item.
Okay. Item 2 is a subdivision and rezoning at 97, 99, 101, 103, and 105 St. Anne's Road under file DASZ 12/2025. In accordance with the in accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, this is a combined hearing, and the following item will also be heard at the same time, namely, item 3 is a variance at 97, 99, 101, 103, 105 St. Anne's Road under file DAV 114829/2025D. Please note, communications were received in support of and in opposition to the matter, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. And at that, I'm just going to Zoom applicant. And all participants in the Zoom meeting have been muted and will be only permitted to speak when called upon. So now I will turn this over to the planners to give an overview.
Thank you. So the subject property is located on St. Anne's Road between Humboldt Avenue and Pilgrim in the Glenwood neighborhood of the St. Vital ward. The subject site is approximately 18,000 square feet in area and currently occupied by 5 single-family dwellings. The subject site is accessed by a paved back lane and is located under the Complete Communities Direction Strategy 2.0 within the Urban Mixed-Use Corridor Policy Area and currently zoned RMFS Residential Multifamily Small. The existing structures on site are to be demolished. The applicant intends to construct a 6-story, 70-foot tall mixed-use commercial and residential building. The building will contain 2 ground floor commercial units and 45 residential units above. Ground floor commercial, those units will be approximately 750 square feet and 1,059 square feet. The submitted site plans show a building width of approximately 145 feet in length and 60 feet in depth for a total building footprint of 8,742 square feet. 32 parking spaces, including 2 accessible spaces and 1 reserved for a car share vehicle, are being proposed. 10 indoor secure bicycle parking spaces and 15 outdoor spaces are also proposed. A total of 5 new trees will be planted. 1 existing tree is identified on site to be preserved, and 35 shrubs will be planted. A 6-foot tall fence is proposed along the property line that abuts the public lane for the majority of that lot line. Garbage pickup will be accessed from the public lane, and a number of variances are required for yard setbacks, landscape requirements, parking minimums, as well, and currently are being reviewed concurrently with this application today. The Urban Planning Division recommends approval with conditions for the subdivision and rezoning. One of the conditions including plan approval to the director. The other condition, a few more conditions, include limiting the height, the maximum building height to 75 feet instead of the 100 feet permitted under the RMU zoning district. Restricting private approaches from St. Anne's and Humboldt Avenue. And a condition that wasn't included but was intended to be was a requirement for a car share vehicle to be provided on site, and that's to be attached to the zoning agreement. The Urban Planning Division has recommended approval for the variances with the exception of one, which is for substandard vehicle stall width next to a fence. Should the planning recommendation be upheld and the variance not approved, the applicant would have the ability to maintain this stall as an 8-foot wide parking stall if the fence is removed along this portion of the site. This would be allowed as a result of an associated variance being applied for, which is that no buffering clause off the lane. So should the council, the committee decide to uphold our recommendation, that is an option for the applicant. Another condition on the variance application includes a requirement to provide the city with the written confirmation of an arborist hired to provide tree protection oversight through the demolition and construction in accordance with the submitted arborist report. The Urban Planning Division is supportive of the the development as proposed, as it meets site and building design objectives under the Urban Mixed-Use Corridor policies of Complete Communities 2.0. Namely, the building is positioned near the front and corner side property lines to create a pedestrian orientation, has a height and scale that fits within the guidance for buildings along mixed-use corridors, uses a variety of building materials, architectural features, which add to the interest of the area. Includes features such as ground floor commercial units and balconies that increase activity along the street edge, and takes vehicular access from the rear lane. The additional housing will help achieve residential intensification targets, provide additional housing options in the neighborhood and city, utilize existing infrastructure, and with the proposed car share, the availability of frequent transit along St. Anne's, and the inclusion of secure bicycle parking for up to 10 bicycles, the subject property and proposed development supports multimodal transportation options. And with that, I will conclude my introduction and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, series of questions, I think both on the variance and on the rezoning. So height, there's no height variance here.
Correct. The RMU zoning district, which they are rezoning to, allows up to 100 feet.
Okay.
And they're proposing 70. We understand that there's some fluctuations as builds go through the construction level detail of the design. And for that reason, we've offered some flexibility within the height. And so in the zoning agreement, we're recommending a 75-foot height cap.
Okay. What would the current height limit be, though, in this very confusingly labeled RMFS PDO1 malls and quarters mature communities residential multifamily small district?
Under RMFS and all of that, it's 35 feet.
Okay. So it's a bit of, if you get the rezoning, then you can go higher up. Okay. Is the applicant in agreement with all of the conditions?
I believe so. I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay. I guess I can ask the applicant that. The parking is hard to get one's head around. I mean, the rules are what the rules are, but it does seem a little, I mean, if it was 35 residential and 8 commercial, then you do the reduction, but this is 45 and 2, but we're still doing the reduction. Do I have that right?
Yeah, let me scroll down to our parking discussion here. So, yeah, there's a number of layers to the analysis of the parking. So being within the urban infill area, there's a reduction of 80% of the typically required parking for the residential. being that it's a mixed-use building, there's the combination of uses criteria, which applies to both commercial and the residential. And so with those calculations, typically the 45 units would have required 67, rounded up to 68 parking stalls, and the 2 commercial units would have required the 2 stalls. And then, yeah, as the combination of uses calculation applies, it brings that all down to a total of 38
Okay.
stalls.
We'll come back to that. But, so, and then they're seeking variance down to 32.
32, correct.
Okay. I think 2 questions left. I'm not sure when this was filed. I feel like I've been in meetings on this for half dozen years. That may be confused with some of the other developments on St. Anne's Road, though. And the applicant has been pretty good at communicating with my office. Is this part of the malls and corridors exercise that we went through last, wasn't June? When did we do malls and corridors? 2024?
I can't recall the exact date. It's been in effect roughly around a year, a little more.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It is located along a malls and corridors designated area. We did have a number of meetings with the proponent to work through the proposal that they had and the rules of the malls and corridors PDO. Ultimately, it was identified that there were some challenges with adhering to all of the criteria under the malls and corridors PDO. Not entirely insurmountable, but variances to the ground floor height. The malls and corridors PDO requires 14 feet. They were proposing 11. And then there was a potential variance to the 45-degree angular plane, which was cutting through a small portion of the upper portion of the building. There was discussion, we do have the opportunity to entertain variances. However, it was indicated that only minor variances under the quote-unquote tolerance, the 5% rule, would have been considered. It didn't seem to fit with the flexibility that they were looking for in the building height. So for those reasons, they opted to come forward with a formal application through the normal channels.
Often I find myself now saying to people, well, yeah, you may not like the height, but under malls and corridors, if they proceeded under that, they could have this way more height. Not here, it's not necessarily with the angular plane stuff. So, okay, so it isn't that this is, I mean, it's, we've had this on St. Mary's Road where we say, well, you should be thanking me for approving this 3-story thing because it could be 9 stories if they'd gone in, but this is more about the same shell would be allowed under the malls and corridors.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Good to know. I may have more questions as we go. Major combined sewer district, MAGER, major combined sewer district. What's up with the combined sewer stuff?
It's a fully combined sewer, so the land drainage from the site currently enters the combined sewer on St. Anne's. Some looks like it's flowing towards the Humboldt partial separation, hence why Water and Waste has included liters per second discharge rate, but it's not a major issue for this site.
But how are they getting around whatever section 4, section 8? What is it? The section 8. You can't worsen the flow into the combined sewer district, and they're
So in a combined sewer scenario where both the land drainage and the wastewater are entering the sewer, there's always the option of holding back some of the land drainage, the rainfall, in making capacity available for increasing the wastewater. In this case, you're removing 5 single-family homes. Each one of those are pre-1990, so they would have a connection to the weeping tile. So you can almost get 4 units per house right there. And then on top of that, you would do the land drainage to make up any additional.
So where's the land drainage going now, though, under the?
Right now, the land drainage goes combined sewer, but you can.
But what are they proposing?
So what you would do is you would hold back the peak. So during a big rainstorm, you got a sort of a model rainstorm, you got a 15-minute peak of when the
Sure.
system gets overwhelmed. So instead of discharging that flow instantaneous, you would either flood your parking lot or your roof storage and then release it over a prolonged time, 2-3 hours, into the system, and which would decrease the peak event and therefore the frequency of the combined sewer overflows.
And what do they propose?
That can be done at the building stage,
Okay,
at the permit stage.
okay. So we don't know if they're,
But it's very typical, and has been for the last 10, 15 years.
okay. Thank you. Interesting. Councillor Allard, any questions on?
No questions.
All right. Transit stops, if not 8 feet away out the front door, within a block or two, I'm assuming?
Yeah, quite close. I've got that in my report, roughly.
Where we need Mr. Winthrop to bring up his transit maps.
Yeah, between 100 and 150 meters for the one to cross the street. So very, very close.
Okay. I think we just put in a crosswalk here, too. Or a block away. Okay, on with the show.
Okay. So now I'd like to invite our applicant, Brendan Johnson, up, down to the stand. You'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation. And Brendan Salico as well will be joining.
And I have to say, I feel like I've voted on this one multiple times already because it's been talked about for so long, but I think I'm wrong on that. I think this is finally actually getting to a public hearing for the first time.
And if it's all right with the committee, we would like to request that we combine our time.
Yep, fine by me.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, councillors, clerks, and administration. My name is Brennan Johnson. I'm a planner at Landmark Planning and Design. We are located at 298 Waterfront Drive here in Winnipeg. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today about the subdivision and rezoning proposal for 97 to 105 St. Anne's Road. And just wanted to start off by saying that we are fully in agreement with the recommendations of the public service. Next slide. Perfect. A local Winnipeg developer and landowner is behind this project. Affinity Architecture led the site and building design processes. Dean Spearman Landscape Architect and Landforum Landscape Architects led the landscape design process, and our office led the planning, engagement, and development approvals processes. Briefly, in terms of the site context, it is made up of 5 lots totaling just over 18,000 square feet in area. The northern boundary is a mixed-use building at 93 St. Anne's Road. The eastern boundary is a rear lane and then homes on Humboldt Avenue and Pilgrim Avenue. Yeah. It is paved.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. The southern boundary is Humboldt Avenue, and then the western boundary is St. Anne's Road. This site is well suited for a mixed-use development. St. Anne's Road in this location is an urban mixed-use corridor. The site is also located on the primary transit network and is served by a frequent transit line with service every 10 to 15 minutes. It is also in proximity of the city's active transportation network, nearby on-street pathways, bikeways, and off-street paths. Having additional people in the neighborhood can further support the existing businesses that are already there, and this site is connected to a full range of municipal services within the infill area. Briefly, in terms of policy context, our Winnipeg and Complete Communities have several policies and objectives supportive of a project like this one. I won't go through all of them, but the policies encourage strategic residential intensification on corridors. There is support for vertical mixed-use buildings with ground floor commercial that can further support the community and provide additional amenities and services, and also policies to ensure that development prioritizes a comfortable pedestrian environment. The proposal features a 6-story building with the main building entrance onto St. Anne's Road for both the lobby to the residential portion and the commercial units that are proposed. We are proposing 2 commercial units on the ground floor, totaling just over 1,800 square feet. There would be 45 dwelling units on levels 2 through 6, and there would be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. We are proposing 32 surface and main floor covered parking stalls. These would be accessed from the rear lane. There would also be accessible parking and visitor parking. And as mentioned in the public services overview, we are seeking a reduction of 6 stalls. So we are required to have 38, and we are proposing 32 stalls, as well as 2 Peg City Car Co-op stalls and vehicles, secure indoor bike parking, outdoor bike parking, and in addition, there would be new street edge and building foundation landscaping and new pedestrian connections to St. Anne's Road. This image here gives you an overview of the site plan. So you can see the 2 commercial units are situated towards the corner of St. Anne's and Humboldt. There would be pedestrian connections directly from both of those units to St. Anne's Road, as well as the lobby to the residential portion of the building in the middle with another connection. Parking off of the rear lane and tucked under a portion of the building. The outline of the building that would be above is in the dark black line. Next slide. And then floors 2 through 6 would feature a floor plan like this one and have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Okay, thanks. There are new plantings proposed as well, so a total of 9 trees, 82 shrubs, and 38 ornamental grasses. These would be located in the side yard along the St. Anne's Road frontage, as well as along the Humboldt frontage.
We'll give you more time if you need it. So lot area is 18,000 square feet-ish.
Yeah.
So roughly each of the, it's about 100 deep? 100?
The property dimensions, I believe so, maybe closer to 120 deep.
Okay. That hangs together. Yeah. Devin seems to be agreeing with that.
Give or take 112, 115.
Okay, thank you. So these aren't 550 housing lots that are coming down. These are 5 30 or 35 footer. Just trying to do total width here is.
It's
That's
around
fairly easy to do based on you've given me one.
Yeah, it's around 170 feet.
150
for the frontage.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, great, thank you. And we have a couple of conceptual renderings to give you a sense of what that would look like. So this is if you're on St. Anne's Road, looking northeast towards Humboldt Avenue. So you can see the commercial units on the ground floor, prominent at that corner, as well as a mix of different colors, materials, and articulation to reduce the overall bulk of the building. This is a view just a little bit further north on St. Anne's Road, again emphasizing the makeup of colors.
We agreed to double it for you, so let's give them 5 more, and then we may need to extend
Okay,
it.
I move 5 minutes extension.
Okay, and then we'll, yeah, but, all
question?
those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. If you
Great.
need more, we'll navigate that.
Great, thank you.
All right.
This is a view looking west at the rear of the building if you're on Humboldt Avenue. So we've continued the facade treatment that's on the front onto the back as well to provide visual interest. And then just 2 more renderings. One is looking north towards downtown, and one is looking south if you were traveling towards St. Vital. In terms of engagement, we had a 6-month engagement process that included 2 rounds of meetings with neighborhood residents. The first of these meetings was in May of 2024, where we introduced the project, shared preliminary design concepts, and received feedback. In October of 2024, we had a second round of meetings to provide a project update, share a preferred design concept, which is what we're presenting today, and continue to receive feedback. There were a number of topics raised by stakeholders during the consultation process. We worked proactively to address these comments prior to submitting the development application. Comments related to building design and aesthetics, So the proposal features a variety of colors, materials, and articulation intended to reduce the bulk of the building. The rear facade, as mentioned, has the same treatment as the front to provide that visual interest. The commercial units will help to provide a comfortable pedestrian-oriented streetscape, and a front yard setback from St. Anne's Road will allow for unobstructed pedestrian movement, while also creating separation between the public and private realms. We had comments and questions related to height, shadows, and privacy. So the preferred design, it features a flat roof. Earlier concepts did consider a peaked roof option. There are various architectural and streetscape elements to help maintain that pedestrian scale. As mentioned, the building height is approximately 70 feet. And just for context, the St. Anne's Road right-of-way has a width of approximately 90 feet, which sometimes is used to help determine appropriate building heights. A rear yard setback is provided to mitigate potential shadows on residential properties to the east, and a sun shadow study prepared by the project architect confirms full compliance with the city's guidelines for continuous sunlight on adjacent properties. In terms of parking, the preferred concept features surface parking off of the rear lane and tucked between a portion of the building. There is designated parking for the commercial units proposed, as well as visitor parking. 2 PEG City car stalls and vehicles are proposed. As I'm sure you've heard, numbers vary, but each can replace up to about 13 private vehicles. The proposed development is also located on the frequent transit network, and there is secure indoor bike parking in excess of the zoning bylaw proposed. And lastly, in terms of landscaping, the preferred design features a front yard setback of about 9.5 feet, which will allow for the planting of shrubs, as well as having other amenities, including benches and bike racks. An arborist report was undertaken, which includes recommendations to protect trees on adjacent properties. And the landscaping proposed on Humboldt will help to buffer the parking area from the sidewalk.
Can we pause the clock there for a second? I'm troubled by the up to 13 cars. I guess what's our and that could be 1, right? That could be or 13, right? I mean, it's thank you. Yes.
Well, no, it's actually
We've
1
got
car.
the English grammar all-star line up here with the 2 of us. Where's that coming from, basically?
So where it's been most recently solidified is in the malls and corridors PDO. The number that is used is 12 vehicles.
All right. I'd forgotten that if I realized that. Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on. Back.
Yeah.
Wind the clock.
No worries, I'm almost done. The project architect submitted a pre-application to the city and received feedback back in February of 2024 when we still did pre-apps. And the feedback was there was a recommendation to undertake a public consultation process. We were requested to create a comfortable pedestrian experience and high-quality design. We were required to include active ground floor uses with direct pedestrian connections to St. Anne's Road. It was requested that we take all vehicular access from the rear lane and not create any new approaches. And then it was recommended we incorporate street edge landscaping, undertake a sun shadow study, and the city confirmed that they would take cash in lieu of land dedication. And we were able to address this feedback through the planning and design process. Just to summarize, we feel this is an excellent proposal. The site is located in an area well suited to support it. It adheres to the policies of our Winnipeg and Complete Communities. The site is located on a frequent transit network and also in proximity of the active transportation network. It would add needed housing units to a neighborhood with a number of existing services and amenities and transportation options. And lastly, it promotes the efficient use of existing infrastructure in the infill area. And with that, I will conclude and happy to answer any questions you may have.
I mean, you've made a number of, normally Mr. Winthrop, when he's here, has all these, and there's, we're 800 meters from a school or whatever. I mean, it's inarguably close to a French immersion school, an English school, not far from this pool, not that far from the library. You know, yeah, there are certainly amenities nearby. Transit could not get closer. You're literally, there's a St. Anne's line there. I'm blanking on the number, whatever it is, but, so yeah, I concede all those points. Clarify if you would, so you're paying in the cash in lieu, because in the malls and corridors, there's that somewhat Byzantine requirement about the privately owned public parks. We're not doing any of that here. We're doing, you're paying in the cash in lieu.
That's correct. We're not actually proceeding under the PDO.
Right.
So it's the typical subdivision rezoning process. So for this application, Parks wasn't looking for any land dedication.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Consolidated hearing, so I should ask about relatively, I get the parking variance, take me through the other variances, all of which you're okay with the admin's position on these variances. So I remember, I think we were doing 175 St. Anne's, and there were people who objected who were living just east, just in to the neighborhood, saying, well, you know, you're so close to St. Anne's, you're on no front yard, and the response was, yeah, because we're trying to move the building away from you. If you know, we can solve that problem tonight if you want, but then the building will be even closer to you. So I get that there's sometimes compromises made here. So if you can speak to some of these, I'm not particularly concerned about the balcony projection one, but yeah, just speak to, and leave aside the parking one. What about the other stuff?
Yeah, no, great question. So the yard variances that we're seeking are for the front yard and also the corner side yard, and that is to bring the building closer to the intersection of St. Anne's and Humboldt. In doing so, it does create more breathing room at the back, so we actually exceed the yard requirement in the rear. I think we need to have 25, and we're proposing more than 40. In doing so, we do have a front yard variance for 9.5 feet, and then we have the corner side yard variance for 5.5 feet. And then on the our other side yard, which would be the north side yard, we are looking for a reduction of about a 1.5 feet.
Yeah. The density stuff always seems to me expressed the wrong way. I've said this before. It should be like number of units per the built area, the lot size, you know, times coverage, 4.2 times coverage or whatever, but we don't do it that way here. So speak to me then about the density variance. So this is, you're looking to do 400 square feet on average rather than 500 square feet on average. Do I have that?
That is correct. So we are pursuing a rezoning to RMU, which allows the commercial units, but the density variance is to have RMFL density. So 400 square feet per dwelling unit instead of 500, which is what RMU would permit.
So you could build the same building with just fewer
right. The
dwelling units, I suppose, so no great triumph, no, yeah.
Right. If we had pursued the RMFL zoning district, the bulk would be the same. There just wouldn't be commercial units.
Interesting.
Councilor
Okay.
Mays, what's your point on the metric? It should be total lot area for density?
My
Or is it-
Toronto days, I remember density calculations were, you know, if it was, a building with 6 times coverage was more dense than a building with 4 times coverage because it was just smaller. And here we do it almost the other way around, that the bigger buildings, the number gets smaller. The denser the building, the smaller the, I mean, I might be commingling unit count with built form here as well.
Okay.
The very minor thing, the 8 feet instead of 10 feet for a stall next to a wall or a fence. So everything else is 8 feet because you can, presumably, and the one next to the wall or the fence, due to whatever the hell bylaw it is, which we went through this in fourplexes over and over again. But so it's really only like a stall, or any stall next to the wall is going to be 8 instead of 10.
Correct, yeah.
But all of the neighboring stalls are going to be 8 anyway.
That's correct.
Okay. I would take a hard line on that with the fourplexes, but That's not what the business at hand here. And what on earth is insufficient building foundation landscaping along St. Anne's Road and Humboldt Avenue?
So for projects like this, when the building is being brought a little bit closer to the street, there's two requirements for landscaping. There's street edge landscaping that's required and building foundation. So when there becomes a little bit less breathing room, those two requirements can't overlap. So the insufficient building foundation landscaping, in this case, the required amount for street edge and building foundation, we don't meet the minimums, but in total, we are still providing a certain amount of landscaping that will be included along that frontage.
That was where I was headed with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Ellard, any questions on the variances or on the rezoning?
No, I think it's in your ward, and I think you're asking the right question.
All right, thanks. And the parking, again, not below grade, but at grade, but staff are okay with that?
Yes, our understanding is the public service is supportive.
Okay. The arborist, there's an arborist report, no, you're saving one and planting?
Correct. So there will be one tree preserved. All of the other plantings will be new. And then the report includes protective measures for trees on adjacent properties.
Okay. You're not taking the whole block here, right? You're taking, so, but lane's already paved anyway, so we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. Okay. Good.
Right, lane is paved.
Okay, I think I may have more, but I think for the time being, that's those are all my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And just to clarify, Brendan, are you speaking today? No? Okay, sounds good. In that regard, we next have registered Rita Morier. Rita is on Zoom, and I welcome you to unmute your mic and turn on your camera, and you'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Yes, good afternoon. I did send in some slides, so I'm just wondering if they're available for the councillors.
Did you submit those? I'm advised we received those. I think it.
Be part of the SharePoint. Be part of the SharePoint.
Okay. I may have thought that was in with the other, the bevy of stuff we got for this morning, but carry on.
I think I got it, Councilor.
Okay, so is there an ability for me to share my screen then?
Correct. You should have the option to share via the Zoom.
Via the Zoom. Okay, good. Not sure how to do that.
Should be, if you just look at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there should be like raise hand, and then beside it should be share.
Correct.
Yep, so if you click.
Okay, and I can do my entire screen, I guess?
Correct, yes.
Share, and then we'll go into,
Hey, there we are.
we have the whole slideshow? Oh, well.
Yeah,
We'll do with what we have. Okay. So, yes, good afternoon. My name is Rita Morier. Je vais parler un petit peu en français puis un petit peu en anglais. I'll go back and forth.
Okay.
I live on 101 Hague Avenue. I'm in the St. Vital Glenwood area. I'm also a member of the Glenwood Neighborhood Association. My concern here today will be with trees and all trees. So we, or the Glenwood Neighborhood Association, of which I'm a representative, are actually in favor of this type of development. It is the right building in the right area, except, hang on, see if I can do this, except that it can be done better. I do notice that there are backlane balconies, which will reduce the backyard privacy for Humboldt residents, but mostly I will speak about the trees. So we have 35 trees that I want to speak about. We have 29 that are private and that will be removed, 1 that will actually be saved, and there are 5 public trees that need to be protected. So my request, first off, right off the hop, is that we have city and private tree protection be enforced. So enforcement of tree protection for both city trees and private trees. This being done by, one, the developer with an arborist plan, a protection plan, and two, the City of Winnipeg urban forestry guidelines that are actually respected or actually followed. So if we look at, I took these pictures, they're lovely, they're gorgeous trees. We have 5 beautiful city trees that require protection and 1 private tree to be protected as well. So I need to give you a little bit of a background history here. I live beside an infill development. There were actually 2 variances for the infill development next to me. One that I appealed and the variance was overturned. The second one I appealed and the variance was granted. Now, part of the condition that I requested was that prior to issuance of building permits, and this is part of the public record, the applicant provides the city with written confirmation of a certified arborist hired to provide tree protection and oversight. So this is part of the public documentation. I also have access to the letter, the written agreement by the arborist. Unfortunately, this is a type of private tree protection that we are witnessing. The wood shoring, which is those wooden panels, are currently remained in ground. They have backfilled all of that. I'm not sure how that protects those 2 trees that we see. So those are private trees, but I'm not sure how that is private tree protection. There is an arborist agreement. I'm not sure if this is part of the plan. Now, if we look at the public tree, so this is a public tree on the boulevard, a gorgeous, gorgeous maple tree. If this is evidence of an arborist tree protection plan, I am dismayed because there's heavy traffic, heavy equipment, construction material. This does not seem to me like an arborist plan to protect a public city tree. So my concern is, for Humboldt and St. Anne's, are those public trees going to be protected in the same way as this tree was protected right next to me on the boulevard? Actually, something is broken here. Private and city trees are not being adequately protected. Even though there are conditions of a variance, it does not mean that these conditions are executed. La ville devrait se faire respecter ses propres règlements et surtout les lignes directrices qui sont fournies par la direction de la forêt urbaine. We need stronger enforcement of urban forestry guidelines and oversight of private tree protection. I do request enforced tree protection, one that is actually executed for public and private trees. I would also like to advocate, and this is not part of the slide, for a tree protection fund. This has been mentioned before, but this is a public tree fund in place when the developer can't meet the number of trees required, and that's 1 tree for every linear 30 feet of street frontage. And if we go back to the previous one on Taché, there would be a lot of street frontage that should require a tree if there's development.
Rita, you're just at the end of your time, but Councillor Allard, how much longer do you need?
2 minutes.
I move 2 minutes,
Sure.
Councillor Mace.
We'll move 2 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's carried. Go ahead.
I want to, so I'll take that back, I'll go back to that sentence. I'm advocating for a public tree fund when the developer can't meet the number of trees required under the current landscaping rules. And at present, and I think this is really important, there is actually no fine if trees are not planted in accordance with the current zoning bylaw. So whatever you see on the development plan, the developer is in no way obligated or in no way fined if they don't follow through with their obligations. We need to protect the trees that we have, both public and private, and we need to enforce the tree planting requirements that the city has set forth. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll follow up and ask about the 5, so the 5 trees are all on St. Anne's then? They're all on the St. Anne's?
No, there's 2 on Humboldt and 3 on St. Anne's.
Good thing I asked. Okay, so 3 on St. Anne's, 2 on
Humboldt.
Okay.
Possibly a 4th on St. Anne's, depending on their approach or what they need, how they have to tie in their utilities. But for sure, there's 2 on Humboldt and for sure 3 on St. Anne's that are public trees that would require protection. Hopefully, better protection than the public tree that better protection that was afforded the public tree next to me.
Fair point. Okay, I will follow up. Thank you for the presentation, and I think that was, pleased to see the GNA saying this is the kind of thing we support, but could be done better, so.
Correct.
That approach. Councillor Ellard, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I think I will follow up with a question about the trees. So thank you, Ms. Moria, for your participation today, and I think we'll move on.
Thank you.
Okay, in that regard, there's no one else registered in support of the application, so now I'll look to the gallery and offer the chance to anyone present in the gallery. If you are not registered and would like to speak in support of this matter, you're invited to do so now. Noting no one. Okay, next up will be opposition. So first up, we have registered Tabitha Robin. I invite Tabitha to come down and speak, and I imagine Daniel Tudolchib will be joining you.
One other person beyond this. Somebody else is up there. I don't have registration. Okay. Both registered.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming down, and yeah, if you just state your name and address, and yeah, happy to hear from you. We have time, so yeah, you've got 5 minutes, but we can certainly give you an extension if needed.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Tabitha, and I live in the Old St. Vital area. I'm here today because I care about my neighborhood and preserving what made it the right choice for us when we moved to Old St. Vital over nearly 18 years ago. Ooh, sorry, I'm nervous. Now, I have many concerns regarding the build proposed for St. Anne's, however, the main one being the strain on street parking. I live on Humboldt, literally in the shadow of the proposed site, and we already have a difficult time finding street parking on our street. I want to be transparent that I actually live in an infill, and I'm not directly opposed to infills. However, my experience living in one and on Humboldt specifically for the last 8 years has brought a few things to light. First, that the infill properties definitely pose issues for the neighborhood in terms of parking, as they are built on smaller lots and don't always offer adequate parking on the property, as we rely on street parking ourselves. Second, the rate and volume at which these infills are being built in the area mean the neighborhoods and streets are continuously having more and more strain on the street parking due to the population density. The proposed 6-story building on St. Anne's aims to provide 45 dwelling units in addition to commercial space on the main floor, with only 32 parking spots available. This is already less than the minimum recommended 38 spots for this build. I understand that a car share has been worked into the plans, that which I am also aware unrealistically on paper equates to the equivalent of 12 spaces, and that a number of spots need to be kept aside for visitor commercial. However, that number only represents 10% of the total number of spots, leaving somewhere between 3 to 4 spots open. I would like you to consider that these retail businesses will require staff who will need to find parking, in addition to any patrons that might frequent these businesses, not to mention any visitors of the 45 dwelling units. Realistically, the number of spots left open for these purposes is not adequate, and the overflow of which will find themselves parking on adjacent streets such as ours. We have already seen this daily with the many similar, albeit smaller scale buildings that have been built along St. Anne's. I witness people leave to go to the barber, the coffee shop, the salon, and even those who park on the street first thing in the morning and walk towards St. Anne's and don't return for their vehicle until the end of a typical workday, leading me to believe they are parking on the street and going to work all day. I will also mention that a number of these business units still remain empty for the buildings that are already built, so not this one notwithstanding, which present the potential for even more strain. Even more strain is already there in waiting once these existing commercial units find tenants. I already often come home after work with the kids and am forced to park half a block away as the street is so full. I will admit that it can be challenging and extremely frustrating when I can't park near my home on my own street, as I have 2 young kids. The winter months are even harder, and it can be challenging even to have to bring in groceries from half a block away. Now, I am young, and I'm healthy, and I'm physically able, but I am certain that that it's ever more difficult for current residents who have health or mobility issues. I'll admit that when we moved, we had initially considered this house to be our forever home. But honestly, the changes in the area have made us wonder if we should reconsider. Now, I understand that the hope or wish is that our city move away from being a car city, and how on paper that sounds ideal. Cities such as Vancouver have fantastic public transit systems, offering buses, SkyTrains, and more. Winnipeg's climate and public transportation infrastructure are nothing like Vancouver's. I do not see a SkyTrain in our future, and buses take forever. Prior to getting my license 7 years ago, I walked, biked, took public transit to commute to work for years. But it's not realistic for most families, especially with kids. It took triple the time at best. It took me an hour and a half to get to work. And let's be real, you're not busing across the city for an hour and a half from work to pick up your kids from school, to jump on another bus with your kids to get your daughter to dance class at 5 on a weekday. The hard reality is that although some Winnipeggers may have may make a car-free lifestyle work, even those who choose to bike or walk in the summer often require an alternative mode of transportation in the winter. The choice to walk or use transit in our -50 winters should remain a choice. This build cannot be planned on a best-case scenario where the choice is eliminated. It needs to take into account the parking and transportation issues as they are and plan accordingly. Otherwise, they're doing a disservice to the neighborhood and they are trying to appeal to. I have looked into alternatives to safeguard the parking on the street for those who actually live on that street. Unfortunately, the only recourse we have would be to petition for a parking restriction.
Do you want an extension of time?
Yes, please.
Couple more minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes. I should be done before that,
5
honestly.
minutes.
Sure.
That's right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So yeah, 5 more minutes.
Thank you. Petition for a parking restriction to be implemented. This would involve a 2-hour parking restriction during the hours of 9 and 5:30. Residents of surrounding streets would then be required to apply for a parking permit, which costs money, to be allowed to park on the street for longer during these hours. This unfortunately does not solve the issue, as anyone in the proposed building would also be allowed to apply for this same permit. Furthermore, by design, a 2-hour limit would not impact clients to the existing and forthcoming commercial units. Really, parking restrictions would more adversely affect visiting friends and family and residents who use street parking outside the traditional 9-to-5 workday. Parking needs serious consideration with regards to these types of projects. As street parking continues to worsen, the quality of the area deteriorates as long-term residents are forced out, as they are quite honestly have no other option. There's no other option available to us. It is incredibly frustrating and disappointing to feel disregarded and at a loss for options. Now, the units proposed in the plans offer a number of multi-bedroom units, meaning either families with kids or multiple adults per unit. Each of these units are very likely to have or require the use of one or multiple vehicles. I understand that, again, the hope is that more people who use alternative modes of transportation will be interested in these dwellings. However, the fact that there are already fewer parking stalls than units will likely result in all the parking spots being full and there still being a need for available spots. I am certain the option will be presented to prospective tenants that they can simply park on the street. In conclusion, I would simply like to urge that proper considerations be given to our specific neighborhood and adjacent streets. I am not opposed to new infrastructure, but what we need is builders and planners to truly work with the people in the neighborhoods they are building in. We are people with families and young kids who chose to live here years ago and set down roots. I cannot believe that my words will have meant nothing and urge that the parking ratios for this proposed building be reconsidered, either by adding more spaces or further reducing the number of units. I would also urge that restrictions might be placed on the type of businesses that are allowed to set up in the commercial space below, with a focus on businesses that require less traffic to further aid in the on-street parking issues. Cities need to be planned for the residents, not to be built on promises that favor developers over residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I grew up on Bertrand Street, so
On what street, sorry?
Bertrand Street, right by the hospital. So what you're describing is like pretty in line with my childhood. I can appreciate it's not, sounds to me like it's not the type of place that, it's not evolving into the type of place that you would like to be, but
I guess
it's
my-
where I grew up, so.
Yeah, I guess my point in this is that when we moved to the area, that wasn't the case. And now at this point, it feels like the consideration isn't there to maintain what there already is, and people don't necessarily have the choice or the ability to just uproot and change areas. Like what we chose the area and it was what it was, and now it's just the consideration's not there.
Thank you for coming. I mean, I've had hundreds of these conversations over the past 8 years with people from Glenwood, so it's thank you for the courage to come down here and say some of these things, because people often call me and then they don't appear, although the GNA has been pretty diligent at appearing. But, I mean, you're highlighting an issue that some people breezily dismiss. No, I believe in housing for people, not cars. And you go, well, that's a nice bromide, but, you know, in reality, we've got this tension. You're right. I mean, there is no subway, there's no light rail, so not everybody who's moving into this building is going to take transit, even though it's literally, you couldn't build a building closer to a transit line. So the issue you're highlighting has come up again and again in Glenwood, and I mean, it was a very live issue in the whole fourplex debate, and finally the staff said, okay, you're putting in 4 units, you put in 4 parking spots, you don't have to have a visitor spot, but you got to have 4. So that, I thought, was a pretty good compromise. Here, I'll speak to it as well when we get to that. But yeah, I mean, I thank you for highlighting it, because it isn't just me, it's people who live in the community saying, you know, I moved here and this is getting to be a bigger and bigger issue. I mean, I favor the developments at the end of the street rather than mid-block, but that it comes at a cost. And how do you balance these interests? You want people to build. It's cheaper to build if you only have to put in 38 spots instead of 48. But then you're 2 blocks away and your kids are in the car and you're trying to get the groceries out. So that's the tension here. So
Yeah. And thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, I like I said, I bussed for years to work, and I lived on Humboldt at the time as well. And it still took me an hour and a half. So although, yes, I was very close to a transit system, at the time I didn't have a license, it's still not convenient. And now that I have a license, I'll be honest, I'll never choose it again. And I understand that for some people it is necessary, and it's a great service for those who need it, but it's cold in winter. I have kids, I just, bringing home groceries even, never mind, just having to park half a block away to bring all that in, carrying a toddler is difficult, and it's frustrating that I can't park on my own street because people are parking there to go to work, or they're parking there to frequent these businesses.
yeah, I mean, it's again, thank you. It's a tension. I think the planning department hears from both sides. I know we have the other side speak to us. I have people speak to us. So
Is there time limited parking?
I think you've looked into the time-limited parking option.
The time-limited parking, unfortunately, as I said in my presentation, is it starts at 2 hours, and then if it needs to be revised after a year, they'll revise it to 1 hour. However, it's between the hours of 9 and 5:30, and which would possibly limit people who are going to work. However, I don't think that that's the majority of the people parking on the street. I think it's residents, because I work from home 2 days a week and I see the street is full literally all the time. And it would also require like a petition to acquire that permit, or sorry, the restriction. And it would also require any resident on the street who wants to park during those hours for longer than the restriction to pay money to be able to have a permit to park on their own street. So it's, I still don't think that it really solves the issues that this building would present. So there's no other recourse other than that, and I've looked into it.
Yeah. No, we've had some success with that, the streets near Saint Amand, which has like 1,800 employees, and people going, like,
Yeah.
oh my God. But you put that down, then that solves that problem.
Well, when it's
quickly.
employees,
But this
for
is
sure.
a different problem, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll have some questions for the admin about this as well, but thank you for raising it. It's a tension, I mean, when I lived in Toronto I lived at, just north of Bloor on Palmerston, I had an apartment, I parked on the street, but I also lived a block away from the subway. So a lot of people on that street didn't have cars because we had this great option of taking the subway, and I took the subway, but that's not coming here anytime soon, unfortunately. So we wrestle with this. So, but thank you for coming down here and taking the time to make the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Daniel, you have a couple words? Okay, next up is Daniel, forgive me if I mispronounce this, Twardoclib?
Twardoclib.
Thank you, my apologies. You'll have 5 minutes to give your presentation.
Thank you. So as a homeowner on Humboldt Avenue, I have mixed feelings regarding the development of properties located at 97 through 105 St. Anne's Road. This development presents itself as an opportunity for renewal and improvement in an area of the city where, as a father of 2, I plan to raise my children, and I hope to live for many years. The area needs renewal. Where this building is to go up, there currently stand a handful of rundown properties covered with graffiti that have been home to squatters and host to arson. They become boarded up eyesores. Old St. Patel has seen a lot of change over the last two decades, though most of it has been positive. My previous home, my first home as a homeowner, was sold to developers who paid fairly for it, tore it down, and they put up 2 new infills in its place. The sale of that home allowed my wife and myself to purchase a newly built home, an infill, just 8 streets over, still in Old St. Patel, but with more space to raise a family, albeit with less yard. That said, I very much understand the problems that infills cause. Space. Parking specifically has increasingly become an issue with the rising number of mixed-use buildings and increasing population density in the block of St. Anne's between St. Mary's and Fermor, where this build is to go up. We've already seen an influx of traffic on our street, and with the currently available commercial spaces beginning to fill in, street parking is becoming increasingly scarce. I understand this is in line with the city's goals outlined in our Winnipeg 2045, the City of Winnipeg's 25-year plan for strategic growth and development. I appreciate that the proposed guidance aims to evolve Winnipeg from a car city to a city of active transportation where everything you need is right where you live. I love that. I love that city for my kids. Unfortunately, the reality for Winnipeg is minus 40 winters. A family of 4 like mine would have a lot of difficulty juggling groceries, getting to dance class, getting kids to school if we were limited to the alternative transportation options currently available. Sure, mixed-use buildings align with our Winnipeg 2045 in theory, but hopes alone do not make complete communities. The commercial spaces that have been created between St. Mary's and Fermor have so far just been redundant retail. 2 coffee shops, 2 hair salons, and a cannabis store. This does nothing for my kids. This certainly won't create employment opportunities for them. They'll need to commute Very likely, this will mean that my family will need 2 more cars in about 10 years. As it stands right now, between St. Mary's and Fermor, much of that new commercial space in these mixed-use buildings remains empty. And yet already, street parking from Humboldt through Bank is becoming scarce. Most pertinently, this building is set to add more rental units than will be able to accommodate parking for. Those derelict houses at the end of my street with boarded up windows, and trash, and graffiti, and squatters and arson, they certainly need to be taken down. But it continues to bother me that those houses arrived at that state because the property owners don't care. They aren't invested in the community. They're invested for profitability. The city's primary concern seems to be tax dollars, not the community's needs. We need parking. The format of this build claims to be in the interest of building residential intensification, but it may in fact force my family and I to move out to Winnipeg's periphery, to Sage Creek or Bridgewater, where there's a little more space, which is completely absurd. Old St. Vital is where my family is. It's where my kids are going to school. It's where we have roots. If the developers want to profit, it can't be at the expense of the quality of life of current St. Vital residents, while adding nothing to the community but population density. Thanks.
Thank you. If you do move, go to Sage Creek, not Bridgewater, because then you're still in my ward, so fine neighborhood, Sage Creek. Yeah, I don't know if Councillor Hallard has any questions. I don't think I do. I mean, it's a good summary of a multi-year debate that goes back and forth here about, in theory, we have all sorts of unused old infrastructure, but then people complain the buses are already full. Or in theory, we'll add more population and soak up all this unused space at the community center, but then the community center says we're already fully booked. We can't even do a zoning meeting, ironically, because we're fully booked. So theory and reality collide here. I mean, there certainly is a push around the city to increase density and increase the housing stock. You've heard that just sitting here today. So how do you balance that, I think is a fair question. So thank you for the presentation.
And what are the other committees going to do, Councillor Mays?
Yeah, I mean, the voyage from here for whatever we approve today is through planning committee and then executive committee and then council. So Councillor done some very good comments to people over the years saying, I can give you everything you want today in Grandstand, it'll just get voted down in a week. So let's try and work this out in some middle ground. And I've said to people, fine, okay, I'll just do what you want and then come see me next week. And planning committee's reversed it. So you occasionally get the serpentine, it goes up, it goes down, the EPCs, and then council switches. So this is not a huge one, to be honest. This is not, there's not a huge controversy here like on some of them, but I'll ask some questions and probably make a motion and we'll sort of take it from there. But thank you for coming down and saying this. It's very much representative of what I hear from people in some of the older neighborhoods.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes those who are registered in opposition. I'm just going to now turn to the gallery to see if anyone who has not registered with us would like to speak today in opposition to the matter. Noting no one. Okay, next up will be for information. Again, we have no one registered for information, we have no one registered for information, and I'll look to the gallery to see if anyone wishes to speak for information. Noting no one. Okay, in that regards, it's now open for questions of the public service.
Okay, a couple of things that were raised by a couple of speakers. Two things, rear balconies looking out toward Humboldt, I mean, was raised as a concern, though we don't have people from Humboldt raising that really as a concern. So what's anything we can do with that, or are there relatively few rear-facing balconies?
It does come up as a common concern. It's about that privacy in relation to those neighboring properties. At the flip side of it, it does create little bit more of an interesting facade. So if people are looking at it, it's not just a blank wall with minimal windows. It has something that is more active and engaging. So there's two ways to look at it. I don't think we're hearing concerns about the privacy and the sight lines, in a significant way, as we typically do. So, we aim to respond to the concerns that are being raised. That being said, if there aren't, it's certainly a benefit to the units and creates visual interest along that facade.
Yeah, well, I remember we had a long do-see-do at that one at St. Anne's and Worthington, and I can't remember, they're trying to move them around and move them onto the north, and yeah, it just went on and on and on. I don't know really that it made for better, I don't think it increased the happiness of the neighborhood at all, frankly. Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Moria talked about preserving public trees. Is that, are they being protected anyway? Am I missing something here? What?
Yeah, the normal process is that if they have to take down a tree, there's a charge, a public tree charge. And it would be normal process to try to preserve them as much as possible.
Okay, so perhaps we'll ask the applicant then, when they reappear, about what landscaping is being done on the Humboldt and St. Anne's side, and whether, what the tree plan is on the Humboldt and St. Anne's side when they come down here. Perhaps we can ask them about that. Nice-looking trees, but I know there's a whole landscaping requirement here. So the parking, just so I'm clear, the range of options I have here, or the committee has here, is really, you can grant a variance to go under 38 or not. You can't go up above 38, presumably. I mean, personally, I think you gotta do one for every one unit, which is the fourplex rule, makes a lot of sense, but that's not the law that's in place right now. So really, Devin, the range here is give a variance, or if you don't give a variance, the most you could require would be 38.
Correct. Excuse me. And just on the discussion of parking, I actually have a question to clarify with the applicant, because I was under the impression that one car share vehicle was being provided per the plan submitted. They did note in their presentation that 2 car share vehicles are being proposed, so just wanted to clarify that when they come up. But yes, to answer your question, parking requirements are calculated in that way, and based on the uses proposed, 38 stalls are required. Now, that being said, the commercial zoning, the commercial uses are calculated as an undefined use, and it commonly defaults to the retail services parking category, which is kind of at the lower end of the spectrum. So that, based on the size of these units, 1 parking stall is required for each of those commercial units. If it were a different type of use under the parking categories, those amounts would change, and if that type of use came forward, a variance application would be required at that.
I mean, they're playing by the rules. The rules just seem a little, I mean, if you had 50 units above and 10 on the main floor, and then you say, okay, well, you probably don't need a full-time unit for each of those commercials, so we're going to do it 0.8. But here, it's you get the point. As soon as you get 1 commercial unit in, you're cutting down on your. But okay. We're okay with the 8 feet for all the stalls, even the ones next to the wall? You're okay with that?
We're okay with that, yeah, provided that fence is removed for that 1 stall, which is required.
Right, you mentioned that, thank you. Okay, and I mean, some eloquent description of some of these problems that have happened with the competing interests of the current residents versus the new residents, but I'll speak to that later, I think. Yeah, I think those are my only questions for the admin. Yeah, good, okay. And we're back to applicant then, I think?
Correct, yes. The applicant would be invited to speak in rebuttal to comments made.
When that's done, I'll probably need about a 5-minute break to just run some stuff by Councillor Allard and the clerk. So.
Okay, just want to start off by thanking everyone who spoke today. We appreciate hearing the feedback at both today's hearing and through our consultation process. In terms of the parking, we always try to find the right balance. So we know that there is a shift moving towards less of a car dependency in Winnipeg and relying more on transit and other modes of transportation. We know that won't happen overnight, but it is something that we also want to be mindful of and plan for so that we're not over parking sites now, and at the same time making sure that we're providing enough parking for what's being proposed to make the project feasible and desirable for folks who might be moving in if it were to be approved. In terms of the
Could perhaps correct me here if I'm wrong. My memory is that in one of these buckets of planning changes, we said Pembina and Portage. Is there no park? There's
Correct.
It's waived entirely.
There are no parking requirements on Portage Avenue and Pembina Highway.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah. In terms of the commercial spaces, understand the concern that they would be generating traffic. We don't expect that to be the case. They are small commercial units. One is 750 square feet, the other just over 1,000. So the intent for them is to be professional service oriented. They're not well suited to retail or a large retail operation just given the size. So we don't expect them to be high traffic generators. As well, those stalls.
We've just had the 2 espresso places open on the east side of St. Anne, so we're probably okay for
probably don't need another one of those.
Short term, yeah.
And as well, those stalls could be used as additional visitor parking in the evening or outside of typical hours of operation for those spaces. Something else that came up was the trees we just wanted to comment on. So as conditioned by the public service, an arborist will need to be retained and oversee the construction process. All of the public trees will be preserved and protected, so we're not looking at removing any of those on either Humboldt or on St. Anne's.
Wonderful.
If there is any pruning that needs to take place in order to accommodate the construction, all of that happens in consultation with the City of Winnipeg, and there is a process that oversees that. So there are protection measures in place. In addition, understand the concern always when landscaping is coming out on private property. But we are proposing new plantings, trees and shrubs as part of this development. And lastly, I wanted to touch on privacy as well, specifically to the balconies that are proposed on the rear facade of the building. So we do have a rear yard of 40 feet, which for an infill project, I would say is generous. Beyond that, there is a 16-foot wide public lane. So we're 56 feet from our building to the next property line. And given the condition of the homes on Humboldt and Pilgrim, how they're positioned, will be facing their side yards. So it's not back to back. So there are trees and garages and things that provide a bit of additional privacy in that sense.
I got turned around there. So it's your St. Anne's Road, your building, 40-foot setback, 16-foot lane. Okay.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and with that, again, I just wanted to say thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts keeping me in the loop on this. That's been appreciated. You've accomplished something that the GNA is speaking in favor of your building, so to take some pride in that. Public trees being preserved. You've gone over the balconies issue. You're playing by the rules in terms of parking. Mr. Clark had a question about the co-op. Are we requiring one and you're doing 2, or clarify that if you would?
Yeah, so we are proposing 2. Part of the reason for that is it's a new area for Peg City Car Co-op. So with that, their preference is to have 2 new vehicles come into play. So through our conversations with Peg City Car Co-op, we are proposing 2 Peg City Car stalls and vehicles.
Okay. Councillor Allard, anything arising out of that?
No, that's, I can recall well, a building that had 2 car co-ops like this, like this being suggested here on Provencher Street, Boulevard.
Okay, I think those are all our questions.
Okay, thank you.
Can we take like 5 minutes here? It might be 10, but let's say 5, and just want a just procedural question for you. So we'll shut her down for 5 or 10. Okay, thanks. That was more than 5 minutes. Sorry about that. But good work by city staff, city clerks. Thanks for your patience in trying to work this out. I'll hand the chair over to Councillor Allard, as this is obviously in my ward, and the tradition is to hand over the chair when one of these is in your ward. So we're doing 2 things here, the subdivision and rezoning and the variance. There was one issue that we had that requires us to do some tinkering with both, but I'll try and explain it when we get there. The issue had to do with parking and the concerns that were raised. So, and I think we also have to graft in, Mr. Clark, the car share. Okay, so, and that will be on this as opposed to the variances.
Correct.
Car shares are in zonings, right?
Yes, okay. So moving forward then on the zoning, and city clerk will hit the brakes if I go off here. Okay, I'll move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary carried.
I'll move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All in favor? Aye.
I'll move that the recommendations of the Winnipeg... Sorry? Aye.
All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, contrary carried.
Okay, I'll move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in as amended?
With the following amendments, yes.
With following amendments and forwarded to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development.
For sure. Okay, and just amendments for the record is, in recommendation 2A, we're going to add the following new conditions, one being section 4, that 2 of the parking stalls be reserved for a car share vehicle, and that an agreement with a car share company to provide 2 car share vehicles be submitted to the Director of Planning, Property and Development prior to the issuance of building permits. And then new condition 5, that a minimum of 38 vehicle parking stalls be provided.
Right. Supporting reasons. Thank you to the applicant for keeping me in the loop on this throughout. It is the kind of thing we've been trying to encourage in Glenwood. More development at the end of streets rather than mid-block. Under current zoning, there would be a height variance, but under the new zoning, there wouldn't be a height variance. But it's not out of keeping with the whole malls and corridors, upzoning of various properties, immediately adjacent to a transit route, adjacent to all sorts of local schools, stores, swimming pool, golf course. It's near a number of amenities. But I'm trying to also balance in here the concerns of the existing residents who are saying, well, the parking has just become too tight. I'm not taking something away from the applicant here. I'm just saying just play by the rules. And the rules are you don't even have to do 1 per unit. You just have to do 38. So this may get changed at upper levels, other committees, and we're putting it in the zoning just so that we don't have to run it all through an appeal through the variances. So this was some good creative work by the staff. So we'll put in the car share provision, but also this provision saying 38 stalls. And again, it may get changed by upper committees here or by council itself. But I do want to send a message, which is I don't think the couple we heard from are being unreasonable in saying, you know, this is a balancing act, and the existing residents are saying if it gets bad enough, we're just going to have to move, ironically, out of the infill area and out to an area like Bridgewater or Sage Creek. So we try to balance here. So again, not taking something away from the applicant, just saying, okay, play by the rules on that one, play by the 38 stalls. So, okay, so that'll be the zoning part of it. So, those are my reasons.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Carried.
Okay. I'll move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
Okay. Please note that the committee has made a recommendation on this matter that will now proceed to council. No further representations are permitted on the subdivision and rezoning. All persons registered for the public hearing will receive notice when the matter is to be considered by council.
Okay, on to the variances, and here I think Councillor Allard and I, it was good of him to go along to move that zoning piece forward. I think we are not in agreement on the one aspect of the variance, but, and everything else we are. Mr. Clerk, I will again maybe need your guidance here, but I'll move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Carried.
I'll move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Carried.
I'll move that in accordance with section 247 sub 3 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the variances are consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan. We are leaving out one of the variances here, right? Okay. Does not create a substantial adverse effect on the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including an area separated from the property by a street or waterway. Are the minimum modification of a zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property? And D, is compatible with the area in which the property to be affected is situated. Supporting reasons, and again, we will, in the next item down then, take out the one variance, the parking one.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so I'm just proceeding here. Yep. The variances, some of these actually make it for a better building. If you move it closer to St. Anne's, it gives you that bigger setback toward Humboldt. So I think some of these, it's tempting to say just play by the rules, but some of these are actually, I think, make for a better structure. So I'm supportive of the variances, except for that one on the 38 parking stalls, cutting that down to 32. I'll not be supporting that, but I think we deal with that in the next provision here. Okay, so on this, I think Councillor Allard and I agree on this part, at least on these variances.
Okay, so Mr. Clerk, are we in order?
Correct, yes, we just need to call the motion.
Okay, so we're going to vote on
All
individually?
All
or
the variances but one.
But the one?
Yeah.
Correct, basically, we're just confirming that in accordance with subsection 247 aspect and the supporting reasons that Councillor Mays has provided.
Okay, and then we'll have another vote after that?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Contrary? Carried.
Okay, so now I'm going back to do the variance one. Okay, the variance one, and you want us to say it's not consistent.
Oh, no. Now we'd proceed onwards that the recommendation be concurred in with the following amendment.
Okay, I'll move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in with the following amendment. As indicated, I think in the balancing act of new buildings and existing neighborhoods, it's a balancing act. So I can either grant the variance or they're entitled to do 38 spaces despite the higher number of units, that all that can be required here is 38 spaces. So I will vote on this one, and here's where I think Councillor Allard and I
Correct, I'll just for the record.
disagree. So I'm moving that I'm concurring that all of them but one.
Correct, yes. So as we have on the as we have in writing right now, the amendments would be delete recommendation 1H and then permit recommendation 2B as applied for, and then here is where we do the title.
But surely Councillor Allard and I are moving forward with all of the variances except one. If we split on this, doesn't it kill all the variances? Or have we already,
Basically, we're getting,
or was that taken care of above?
yeah, correct, because we'd be getting rid of the 32 parking spaces. That one's gone, but then we will be.
Everything else, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
but then we'll be permitting the prior struck out clause of the parking stalls with
Okay.
the width.
okay. So for clarity here, I'm moving that all of the variants be granted except the one with this motion. So if Councillor Allard and I split on this, then all of the variances are granted, except there's a split on the final one. so it fails.
Exactly. Yes, and then we'll also have this clause from the Winnipeg Public Service be applicable now, which is parking stalls width of 8 feet, 2.44 meters, instead of 10 feet, 3.05 meters for stalls adjacent to a wall or fence. That will now come into effect. Am I understanding that correct?
That was always in effect.
That was in the public service recommendation, it was crossed off.
Was it?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yep, right there. Yeah.
Sorry, missed that entirely. Okay, so that will,
So yeah, correct. So just one more time I can state, so for our amendments then, we'll be deleting recommendation 1H, that's pertaining to the parking spots, and then the crossed off bit in the public service recommendation that will become applicable, which is the amendment will be permit recommendation 2B as applied for.
yeah, okay, sorry. Now I understand your earlier question, which I had failed to understand earlier.
Okay, so.
Okay,
Councilor
so-
Mays, you're proposing,
So on this vote,
where's the wedge here?
I believe if you vote against me on this, then all of the variances are granted except for the,
The variance would fail because we're at a time, or the motion would be lost is the first step. So therefore, what would follow after is either another motion could be made, or due to the aspect that we have only a quorum of 2, this motion would fail, or sorry, this item would fail.
okay, so we're kind of doing it, okay, we're doing it sort of A before B maybe, or, okay, where am I in the script here? Okay, so Councillor Allard and I will have a split vote here, then I will move a second motion saying, okay, grant all the variances except, except the parking stalls, and then we can vote together on that.
So essentially that we'd be doing the following amendments, and then plus the permittance of recommendation 2B, the stuff that was crossed out. And then this is where the vote would fail, and then here's where I'd call the question if there is another amendment we'd like to make to the process, or if this vote will be lost entirely, and the application will be rejected for the variance.
Okay, okay, so we'll first have a split vote, and then the second vote will be listing off 1 through 1 to 1G, and then 2 A and B. And presumably we can all agree on that, and then,
I mean, we can.
I don't want to split on all the
We can
variances,
agree
because we're
on part
not
of the
split
variance,
on
right?
all the variants. We're agreed on 9/10 of it here.
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of like the variance be approved in part. We do that all the time.
Could I suggest a recess just to make sure I have everything?
Okay, so I thought we had it, so another brief recess, please. Sorry, I thought we had this. Okay, we're back, trying to get to the finish line here. Okay, so the goal here is both of us support all of the variances. We are split on 1H. I will move that so presumably Councillor Allard will vote against my motion here, and then, but for clarity, my understanding is that from the previous, anyway, for the record, we support all of the variances except for 1H. So that is on the transcript. So there should be no need for the applicant to appeal any of this possibly, but certainly not the other variances. Okay, so I'll move that the recommendation, and similarly, the preceding vote does not, even if we split on this one, if we split on this one, then 1H, the variance is not granted.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
If we come to a tie vote and we can't make a decision, then the vote will fail. And the amendments are delete recommendation 1H and then permit recommendation 2B as applied for. Those are the ones we have for this current motion.
Okay, so I'll move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in as amended.
With delete recommendation 1H and permit recommendation 2B as applied for. And then here's where we'd call the question.
Okay, I'm at the
Okay,
end of
so
my
this
line
is
here.
all.
Okay,
this-
fine. So,
This is all in, this one? With an additional parking clause?
did that complicated things hopelessly? Like, we're both in favor of the 2B thing, the.
Correct.
the-
It's, with us deleting 1H, we're now having 2B come into effect, correct?
That was the desire to allow the parking next to a fence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So I'll move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in as amended, and the variances be approved as amended. I think Councillor Ellard
Yes, this
doesn't
was-
like my amendment, which is fine. We've hopefully nailed this down, so if you call the question, then
So this is the whole bunch of them, including your amendment?
apparently not.
I just, I like, can the administration can speak? Can you speak? No? Can't speak?
So,
Or, yeah, Mr. Clerk, yeah.
of course, so the variance, so at this point in time,
Yes.
the contention right now is that, yes, we are okay if the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service, but but we would like the following amendments, which is as stated, delete recommendation 1H and permit recommendation 2B as applied for. If a tie vote occurs here, then if no other motions are proposed after this tie vote, then the result will be that no conclusion can be made, the vote will default to a negative, and therefore the variance will end up as rejected.
Okay, so,
I'm going to move another motion after this.
okay, so I'll call the question on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay?
Okay.
Fails?
I'll move,
Next.
for clarity, I would like to move a motion that the committee is supportive of all of the variances as requested, except for item 1H.
Correct, yes. So because we can't come to an agreement, because the committee does not come to an agreement regarding 1H, and we're back to the tie vote, therefore, yeah, this variance fails.
Okay.
And we would just need to finish with the concluding statement, which is that the.
Well, I'm going to move that motion, and, which is that the committee wants to, put on record that the committee is supportive of all the variances except for 1H.
For sure.
Okay.
Yep. No, that's on record.
Because I want that to be clear, and I want it to be clear we're
Okay, so you're
split
moving,
on 1H.
so you're moving that now?
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk, are we in order?
That is where I am not certain, to be honest. I'd have to seek verification regarding a separate motion like that.
I'll withdraw it.
Okay. Like, it is on the record that,
For clarity and on the record, we are in favor together of everything except 1H, and because we could not agree on the 1H variance, the variance fails. Therefore, the requirement is 38 stalls. However, if the applicant, through the zoning agreement process, which is heading up through council, that may get moved from 38 to some other number that is lower than 38. I just want that on the record, so that I certainly,
Okay, so the
Sure.
variance fails, does it move up to P and D?
no,
Or is it
the result would be that the variance is rejected, and the critical path is the Real Community Committee, so
you keep saying the variance, and I'm going to call you on that. It's just one of the.
Like the variance
There are
app-
like 11 or 12 variances here.
Correct, yes.
We are in favor of 1A, we're in favor of 1B, we're in favor of 1C, we're in favor of 1D, we're in favor of 1E, we're in
Councilor
favor of
Vegas,
1F.
Why don't we just
Like-
move all of the variances except that one clause that's problematic?
That's what I
that-
thought we would do a half an hour ago, yeah.
Yeah.
okay, in that regard, we can then,
Well, I
In
think I
that-
put my
Or should we
concerns
just-
on the record.
Should we adjourn till next month?
Okay. If it is the case that we just want to delete 1H, we can easily do that. We'll just repeat that the recommendation of the public service be concurred in with the following amendments, delete recommendation 1H and then permit recommendation 2B as applied for. Therefore, recommendation 1H will be deleted, 2B will come into effect, and all the variance conditions above will be, recommendations and the conditions subject below will be approved.
Okay. Councillor Mays, Mr. Clerk?
Fine.
So, and then therefore, the result will be that the variance is approved in the end.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm in the chair. Councillor Mays, I'm looking, so are you moving what the clerk said?
Yes.
Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the 38, we are not granting the 38 business here, or the 32 amendment, the amendment to 32. However, it may yet come to pass through the zoning, or the applicant may file an appeal on this variance. Okay, I'll move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
All in favor? Aye. Contrary, carried.
Okay, please note that the committee's decision with respect to this application may be appealed. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the order issued, which will be mailed to all persons registered. Okay, and councillors, that'll conclude public hearings, and I believe Mr. Chair, that we...
I'll just leave the thing with people, so I'll just deal with that.
Sounds good. And that
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Do you want to take the chair back, Councillor Mays?
Yeah, do you want to move adjournment?
Yes. With you, Mr. Chair, I move adjournment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That is carried.
All right.
Thank you. That was a conflict.